Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call us to order, please. Thank you. This is the 23rd meeting of the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee. Welcome to everyone. We acknowledge that Ottawa is located on the unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation, whose culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. We recognize and honor the valuable contributions of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. They and their ancestors have been stewards of this territory, caring for the land and the waters that flow through it for generations. At this time, I'd like to turn to our committee coordinator to conduct a roll call.
Councillor Bradley.
Here.
Councillor Desroches. Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Devine. Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Councillor Johnson.
Here.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Councillor Luloff.
Good morning.
Conseillère Plante. Councillor Skalski.
Here.
Vice Chair Hill.
Present.
Chair Brockington.
Here.
Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So item 2 on our agenda is declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Seeing none. Confirmation of minutes. Our last meeting, meeting 22, was held on March 23rd, 2026. Any issues with the minutes? Are those carried? Thank you. Item 4, Office of the City Clerk status update, motions, directions, and inquiries. The motion before us is that the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee receive this report for information. Anyone need this held? Is that received? Thank you very much. Item 5, Public Safety Service, the 2025 annual report. There will be a staff presentation on this item, so we will hold 5.1. 5.2 is the Bylaw and Regulatory Services 2025 annual report. We will have a staff report as well on this matter, so we will hold this item. Item 7 is the motion from Councillor Devine on behalf of Councillor Menard, so we will hold that. We have delegations today. We'll get to notices of motion and inquiries. Under item 10, other business, we have received a notice from Vice Chair Hill that he intends to move a motion this morning with respect to the licensing and regulation of hardscaping contractors. So we have a procedural motion we're going to deal with now, and then if that's successful, we'll deal with the motion when we get to item 10. So Vice Chair, would you mind reading your procedural motion in, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Regarding the amendment to Bylaw 2002-189 as amended with respect to licensing and regulation of hardscaping contractors, whereas Council enacted Bylaw 2025-415 to amend Bylaw 2002-189 as amended with respect to the licensing and regulation of hardscaping contractors on November 12, 2025, and whereas the intent of the hardscaping licensing framework is to establish a more permissive standard for homeowners, enhance public awareness of permitted work under the city bylaws, and to provide city staff with clear tools to address non-compliance.
The procedural motion. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to the top there. That the rules and procedures be suspended to consider the following motion as hardscaping season is upon us, and there are aspects within these amendments that will enable some of our small hardscaping companies to save money on things like vehicle wraps.
Okay, so colleagues, what we're dealing now is just the procedural motion, whether we allow this to be added to our agenda under item 10 or not. So any speakers to this item? If not, is that carried?
Carried.
Okay. So we will have the Vice Chair read the actual motion on when we get to item 10. Okay, at this time we have a special ceremony, so I will go up to the podium.
Good morning, everyone. So to kick things off this morning, first I want to welcome our honor guards from the Ottawa Fire Services, the Ottawa Paramedic Service, and Bylaw and Regulatory Services.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. So today is a special day for us, bittersweet for me, and I'm sure bittersweet for many others as well, as today marks the final time that our Director of Ottawa Bylaw and Regulatory Services, Roger Chapman, will be presenting to this committee. And I know there's a joint committee meeting tomorrow, which you'll be at, but this is the last committee meeting here. After an incredible 35 years of service, Roger will be retiring at the end of this month. Roger began his municipal career with the former city of Nepean as a traffic, parking, and animal control officer. Over the decades, he has consistently demonstrated a resident-focused approach grounded in practical service delivery. In 2015, Roger became the Director of Bylaw and Regulatory Services, where he has provided steady and responsive leadership through significant events, as well as a period of considerable growth and change for the service across our city. Throughout his career, Roger has prioritized strong community relationships built on trust, collaboration, and accountability. He is widely respected for his responsiveness to residents, colleagues, and members of council, as well as his deep knowledge across the broad range of complex municipal issues. You are an encyclopedia when it comes to bylaws. I just want to say personally, as a city councillor and not only the chair of this committee, Roger has been very responsive, always gives me his time. I have called him when he's golfing on the golfing course. I think I've called you when you've been in Florida. He's been a considerable help. There's certainly a lot of challenges in my ward with respect to bylaw, and Roger has been fantastic public servant to the people of Ottawa for his entire career, and exactly the type of employee that councillors like and respect very much. So it's been a complete honor to work with you, Roger. So joined by your family here today, who I met before the meeting started, including your wife, Bobby, and your two sons, please join me in thanking Roger for his exceptional service to the city. His leadership, dedication, and lasting contributions will be remembered. We wish you every success, happiness, and plenty of time on the golf course in the next chapter that follows. So at this time, I'd like to invite our General Manager of Emergency and Protective Services, Ryan Perot, to say a few words as well. Ryan?
Thank you, Chair Brockington, and good morning, everyone. Today, we mark a meaningful and well-earned milestone as we recognize the retirement of Roger Chapman, Director of Bylaw and Regulatory Services, following 35 years of exceptional public service to our community. Aujourd'hui, nous célébrons la retraite de Roger Chapman, Directeur des Services des Règlements
So
Municipaux.
today we are celebrating Roger here after 35 exceptional years within our community.
With Roger for 16 years, 11 of those with him serving as director. And throughout that time, his leadership has been steady, thoughtful, and deeply respected. He began his career on the front lines with the former city of Nepean, and he never lost sight of where great public service begins, with a team of dedicated people. Roger led through complexity with a clear focus on collaboration and trust. His impact is reflected in the many accomplishments achieved under his leadership, from advancing the accessible taxi program to establishing the smoke-free bylaw enforcement team to guiding the development of short-term rental regulations. He also strengthened the city's approach to vacant buildings and problematic properties, improving safety and neighborhood livability. Under Roger's leadership, he has helped modernize operations and position Ottawa as a leader in municipal bylaw services across the country. Investments in facilities, including a new business licensing center and improved workspaces, reflect his firm belief that supporting staff is essential to delivering excellent service. But beyond these achievements, Roger will be remembered for how he led, with responsiveness and genuine care for residents and colleagues alike. He has been an invaluable voice at our leadership table and a trusted partner across the organization. Mais au-delà des succès, Roger sera souvenu pour la manière
Beyond
dont
his
il a dirigé
success,
avec
what stands
réactivité
out
une
is the way
véritable souci de
Roger
résilience et
has
de collègue.
led.
Il a
He's
été
led
une
with a
voix
sense of action, openness, and trust. He's been very important at at the table and a real asset amongst the organization.
Here with us this morning, the senior leadership team, Emergency and Protective Services, and the residents of Ottawa. Thank you, Roger. Congratulations, and we wish you a very happy and well retirement.
Okay, man of the hour, come on over. Please join me over here. So I'm especially happy to be presenting a particular gift to Roger, as it is a photo that captures the inaugural flag raising for the Bylaw and Regulatory Services Appreciation Day that was held last year on October the 9th. This Appreciation Day was formally established by way of a motion at this very committee as a way to publicly recognize and celebrate the contributions of bylaw and regulatory services staff in helping to uphold community standards, facilitate the safe and efficient movement of people, goods, and services, and enhance the livability of our city. And I cannot think of a person who has exemplified those qualities more than our director, Roger Chapman. So Roger, congratulations. So we're going to do a few pictures first. I'm going to invite members of council first, and then we'll invite the senior leadership team and then Roger's family. Does that sound good? And then anyone else. So members of council. Oh, sorry. Yes, Roger needs to say a few words first. So please. Sorry.
Thank you very much. This is more than what I expected today, so I really do appreciate it. Thank you, Wendy, for being here today, and thanks, Ryan, for the kind words, and thanks, Chair Brockington. All the members of council that are here, thank you very much for taking the time to come out, and all the colleagues that have showed up here today as well. Thank you very much. After 35 years of municipal service, 11 of which was the role of Director of Bylaw, it's hard to sum up what this journey has meant to me. I've been fortunate to work with dedicated city councillors, general managers whose leadership, trust, and support made meaningful work possible. Thank you for your confidence that you placed in me over the years. To the members of the public, it's been a privilege to serve you. Our work was always about building safe, respectful, and livable communities. And the strong relationships we built along the way are among the accomplishments I'm most proud of. Most importantly, I want to thank my executive team and every member of Bylaw and Regulatory Services, past and present. Your professionalism, your integrity, your commitment to service set the standard every day. The success attributed to me today is truly reflection of the hard work that you put in every day. So thank you for that. I leave with pride in what we've accomplished together and deep appreciation for the relationships we've built across the community. Thank you for all your support, the memories, and this meaningful recognition. Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, members of council for a photo.
can be on.
Oh, my day. That's
Okay, I'd like to call us back to order. Before we begin, I'd like to recognize that this week, just want to call us back to order, please, so we can begin. I would like to recognize that this week is National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. On behalf of all of my colleagues, I wish to thank our call takers, dispatchers, radio and emergency phone systems technicians, communications center staff, and telecommunications professionals across Ottawa. Their work is critical and is reassuring to know that skilled and dedicated professionals are there to support our community at the other end of the line. Turning to today's agenda, we will receive reports, two of which will have a presentation, and we'll be voting on two separate motions, which you know about through our agenda. First, we'll receive the report. First presentation, will be from Beth Gooding, Director of Public Safety Service, on that service's 2025 annual report. This includes updates on emergency management, corporate security, and the corporate radio program. Second presentation from Roger Chapman, Director of Bylaw Regulatory Services, and Associate Director Jake Gravel on the Bylaw's 2025 annual report. The report outlines the service's activities over the past year, including performance metrics and key program initiatives. We'll then proceed with the motions from Councillor Devine and Vice Chair Hill. I will note that at 10 o'clock, I have to step out of the chair to attend another meeting. Vice Chair Hill will take the chair, and I expect to be back by 11 o'clock. So on that note, we will proceed with item 5.1, which is the Public Safety Service 2025 annual report. It's good to see our General Manager and Director Gooding here, and General Manager, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members of the committee. I'll hand it over to Beth Gooding for this morning's presentation.
Thank you. So I'll be presenting today on the achievements of the Public Safety Service in 2025. Et je voulais juste vous dire que c'est toujours un plaisir d'avoir l'occasion de vous parler.
I just want to tell you that it's always such a pleasure to tell you about the different activities that I am partaking in.
Programs managed by the Public Safety Service. We're reporting on everything today with the exception of the 911 file, which will be presented separately at the June committee meeting. So we help prepare for, respond to, and recover from emergencies. We ensure that the city's many facilities are safe and secure. And we manage a very important piece of critical infrastructure, which is our corporate radio network. Next slide. L'année 2025 a été une année assez normale en ce qui concerne le type d'événement auquel nous avons été confrontés.
2025 was quite a year considering everything we were faced with.
But it's a good opportunity to remind you that across all of the programming of the Public Safety Service, we're always focused on preparedness. We take an all-hazards approach to our work so that we're ready for anything. But I did want to mention something specific about weather. So recently, some members of the Emergency and Protective Services Department received a briefing by the Chief Meteorologist, Chris Scott at Palmarex, which is a parent company of the Weather Network and Meteo Media in Canada. And he reminded us that Canada experiences the most diverse and extreme weather conditions in the world. And on top of that, specifically, the city of Ottawa has been particularly unlucky over the past 10 years. We've faced an overabundance of extreme weather. And that's why it's important to keep doing things like training staff. So last year, we trained twice as many staff members as we did in 2024 to continue to grow our roster of people who can support an emergency response. And we also released a new public emergency notification system, Ottawa Alert, that allows us to communicate with residents in new ways during an emergency. Next slide. Voici quelques autres activités de l'année dernière que nous souhaitions.
Here are some other activities of the past year in review.
We continued to engage our community partners last year, and this includes the Emergency Food Security Task Force, which is chaired by the Ottawa Food Bank. We worked with that broad network of partners to develop a comprehensive emergency food response protocol, including a funding approach for cost recovery, which had been lacking in the past. We also continued to work with in the community with a range of groups to keep promoting the concept of neighbors helping neighbors. And one of the things that we don't talk about a lot, but which is important, is the work that the Public Safety Service does to manage our corporate radio network. It's relied on for life safety by our emergency services personnel and other frontline staff. And in 2025, we initiated a project to upgrade the radio infrastructure, and it's been going very well. I'm going to speak about corporate security on the next slide. So next slide. So as usual, here's a snapshot of the reported security incidents at city facilities last year. In general, 2025 was similar to 2024. And this is another good example of how in the public safety service, the focus of our work is on preparedness. And actually in the corporate security space, the focus is on prevention whenever possible. We try to prevent security incidents by ensuring that the right parameter security measures are in place, including security systems, by conducting training and drills with frontline staff, by putting in place the right security policies and procedures, and by mainstreaming security considerations into the city's broader programming, including planning for all new capital projects. Next slide. So in closing, the public safety service will focus on continuous improvement, as we always do going forward. The radio infrastructure project that I mentioned earlier will be completed in 2026. We're working on improving our ability to do better data analytics using our security systems data. And we're continuing to build community resilience in the face of emergencies. This includes a new pilot grant program through the city's Climate Ready Ottawa strategy. The goal of the program is to provide funds to organized groups in Ottawa to help them purchase supplies, equipment, and services that they can use to help others during emergencies. And we'll be bringing that to committee, either this one or the Environment and Climate Change Committee in June with our partners in Security Initiatives Department. So that's the end of the public safety service presentation. But with permission from the chair, I will offer to do a 60-second update on the spring freshet situation. Okay, thanks, Chair. So water levels on the Ottawa River are rising quickly this week due to recent rain, warm temperatures, and upstream snowmelt. A provincial flood warning is in effect between Arnprior and Pembroke, with Viadon Acres being the closest adjacent community in Ottawa. Forecasts indicate that some Ottawa area levels may approach or exceed those seen in 2025. And what this means is that localized flooding is expected in low-lying areas over the next few weeks, which is typical during the spring freshet. Early impacts, and Councillor Luloff will have known this already, but early impacts have already occurred at Petrie Island, where the causeway closed on April 15th. And we're encouraging residents in flood-prone areas to stay informed and to take basic precautionary and planning steps. The city's Spring Freshet Task Force, led by Public Works Department, continues to closely monitor operations and conditions, and 14 sandbag stations are now open across the city. So overall, conditions are manageable right now, but we need to keep close watch and stay ready to if things shift. Thanks for that.
Thank you very much, Director Gooding. We have no speakers and have received no written submissions for this items. Is there any discussion that any members wish to have on this item? Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Beth, thank you as always for the report, but also thank you for the much appreciated dedication and earnestness you bring to this. I always appreciate it. I know that public safety is a topic that Councillor Hill and I often talk about, having been through several disasters in our ward. I have a few questions. On the spring freshet, I was very glad to hear that currently the water levels are not anything compared to, I think it was 2017 and 2019. My question now, I know that having been through several of these incidents before, one topic that I've addressed with you is often the challenge or the impasse that the city experiences when there's a limit to what the city can do, i.e. directly intervening on any private property and so forth. And so whereas we can provide access to sandbags, city employees can't necessarily go and do it in the case of an emergency. I know that there's no immediate need to do that at this moment. And if I remember correctly from conversations in past years, the impasse had been that even though we, the city, have a massive workforce, the issue is whether it's liability on intervening on private property or the cost thereof. Not saying that there's an immediate need for this kind of massive deployment, but recognizing that that can sometimes be a barrier, the limits to what we with our workforce can do. Are there any additional thoughts, discussions, questions, challenges on how to address that inability to deploy should there ever be a grave need?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. And there's a couple things I'd like to highlight. So you're correct. We do not have a mandate to work on private property. And we have to be careful because the city has limited resources and we need to make sure that we prioritize work in line with the city's overall raison d'etre. But it's a good opportunity for me to talk again about that climate resiliency pilot grant program that we're seeking to launch this term. Because what it is enabling, organized community groups to be able to step into that space and work on private property where there may be a gap right now by giving them funding for equipment, supplies, and other services that they can then use in their community. We will always make sand and sandbags available. We'll always have good partnerships with NGOs and other entities that can support directly. And we'll always communicate risk and make sure that we're helping residents understand how to prepare. But it's really that ecosystem that needs to work together with all different parts having their own mandates and their own roles and responsibilities, including homeowners. I need to highlight that.
Absolutely. Just one follow-up question to that. Again, and you raised the climate resiliency plan. Our climate team has told us, be ready for more severe. Should we ever, and so I'm going to go back just to the, where we have inabilities, where we don't have a mandate, where there may be liability issues, where there may be job description issues. Should there ever be a state of emergency that will only be properly responded through massive deployment of our workforce, should that ever be, would there still be hurdles, mandate, liability, work descriptions that would prevent us from being able to rapidly deploy thousands of people to go address a problem?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. It's a good one in the sense that it comes up frequently and it can be a bit confusing. Under the Provincial Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, when any municipality in Ontario declares a state of emergency, an additional labor law comes into effect that covers liability for spontaneous volunteers. Having said that, though, a declaration of a state of emergency is a very serious affair, and what it means is that all resources in the city have been expended.
Have been expended or can be expended?
We've surpassed all of our ability to help ourselves. And so that declaration of a state of emergency is meant to be rare.
Good, thank you. Appreciate that. Switching a different topic, in your report, you had in your slide deck and in your report, you had your table of corporate security incidents. And I did notice that, among the many tiers, there's some that have gone up, some that have gone down. You didn't speak much to it. Are there any concerning trends that you observe that require any awareness on our part or attention on your part?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. It's another excellent one. I just want to refer to the table to make sure I name it correctly. I'm always concerned about the category called personal incidents. And that is one of the few categories that went up in 2025 from 2024. And the reason I'm always concerned about that one is that it includes some very serious things like assaults against staff. And so what we continue to see is some very aggressive behaviors at our public-facing buildings. And in some cases, like I said, very serious situations involving assault, which we never want to have happen at a city facility.
I concur. Quick follow-up to that. On that issue, and seeing as how, because you see a spike from 2024 to 2025, I believe that's also the year that we put in, security measures here at City Hall. Have you seen any downward correlation of incidents since the installation of security measures?
Thanks again for the question, Mr. Chair. So As I mentioned in the presentation, we are trying to be more data-driven. So what I can share is that since we implemented security screening at City Hall, on average, there have been 10 fewer security incidents at this building each month. That's significant because over the course of a year, it's 120 fewer security incidents.
I appreciate that data very much. My last question, you'll remember a conversation last year, because if I were to look at this table from last year, there was one more metric on it that is not on this year, the metric for protests and demonstrations. We had a great conversation last year about, the questions I had about why protests and demonstrations was listed as a category of corporate security incidents. I know it's not there this year. I don't believe there was a direction or a motion that I passed that got that change. I assume it was staff voluntary. Can you give me a bit of a rationale for what was the rationale or thinking behind removing that metric, protests and demonstrations, from a list of corporate security incidents?
Sure. Thanks again for the question, Mr. Chair. And for those who remember the presentation last year, it came up as a question from Councillor Devine, and we appreciate all of the feedback, and that's why we like coming to committee so much. We took that into consideration. So the reason that we were tracking demonstrations as a security incident is because it does require our guards and our staff to monitor the situation in case of escalation. But we had also discussed last year at council that the vast majority of demonstrations that take place at city facilities are very peaceful. And so what it was doing, and it was unintentional on our part, but by putting it into the table, we were giving the impression that all demonstrations may be perceived negatively. And we took that to heart. And so we decided that, our guards are still going to have to monitor when there's a demonstration at a city facility and make sure that it doesn't escalate, but we don't have to track that as a security incident in our statistics. So we appreciate the discussion at this table, and we took that to heart.
I appreciate that context, that having observed that the vast majority of demonstrations and protests are peaceful, there was no longer need to perceive them as a security threat. I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. Councillor Skalski.
Thank you for all that's been done. I just had a question about the Alertable app. So a lot of folks didn't realize that we have this app, and it's a really great way to let people know that there is, that there's something bad happening in your community. I'm curious what the uptake has been for the actual app and if there's anything we can do to get the information out on that one.
Thanks for the question, Mr. Chair. It's great, and we are trying to market it consistently. I think our uptake right now is at about 10,000 subscribers across Ottawa, which sounds low, but in comparison, because we've benchmarked against other municipalities, it's sort of on par with what we're seeing elsewhere. Before we launched the app, we had a very good discussion with the City of Vancouver because they've had something similar in place for the past 3 years. And they told us that it was important to keep marketing. And they also told us that they definitely saw subscription spikes during and after emergencies. And so we're doing all we can to encourage people to subscribe, and we would love it if you could amplify that messaging. We'll be doing another round of promotions during Emergency Preparedness Week, which is always across Canada the first week in May.
That's great. Thanks. And yeah, happy to do that. I think it's a great tool and people should have it on their phone. One other question, and it's about so one thing that comes up often when we're talking about emergency sort of preparedness in our own community, and it comes down to the spaces that we have. And so and whether there are gaps in what we have today to actually properly support an emergency. And so my question is whether we've ever conducted an audit of the facilities that we have here in the city. I'm thinking of like community centers and things that, the whole breadth of facilities, and identified which ones or, where the gaps are to make those facilities support communities in the event of an accident. And specifically, if there is if we have not done that type of audit, do we have plans for such in the future works?
Thanks again for the question, Mr. Chair. And it's a positive response. I don't want to speak on behalf of Recreation, Culture, and Facility Services because they're not here, and I don't want to steal their thunder, but because they're not here, I'm just going to do it anyway. They have been a fantastic emergency management partner, and they have always kept a very up-to-date list of the capabilities at our city facilities to support emergency response, including emergency reception centers during the day and even overnight. But that amplified probably tenfold after the derecho, where the power outages were so widespread that there were so many lessons learned related to how our facilities functioned without power. And so they updated their sort of asset mapping and put in place very pointy measures to upgrade our capacity, especially in key locations that we know would be central hubs during an emergency response. And that includes a probably 5-year capital plan where they're installing permanent generators in key recreation centers and also investing in mobile generator capacity, because what that enables them to do is to hook up a generator at another facility in times of need. So like I said, I feel badly speaking on their behalf, but I'm complimenting all of their work in this regard, and they have very detailed asset plans.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Skalski. Councillor Plante.
Oui, merci beaucoup. Alors, la semaine passée, il y avait une alerte sur le
So
campus
last
de
week there
l'Université
was
d'Ottawa et la
an
seule
alert
raison
on the University of Ottawa campus, and the only reason why I knew, I had a call from the police chief, and I got an update. But when there's a building like U Ottawa that is in a very dense urban environment, and they have campuses here and there, it's not really distant like Carleton. So can we use the town's app, the city's app in order to know? Because there are families there with houses, and so I'm wondering, it's not just the university campus that's affected. Can that app parallel to other apps that speak about the same thing, which is the safety of our neighborhoods? Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. It's always a challenge. Communications in emergency situations. It won't always be a perfect turnkey solution. In answer to your question, the answer is no. Our app does not have the capability to liaise with other communication channels. So in the situation with U Ottawa last week, if it was an Ottawa municipal facility, we would have most probably used communication measures that one would consider traditional. We're always looking to up our capacity, but it's always challenging, I must admit. What we do is we look at the situation and we evaluate it. We evaluated the university situation and we saw if there was any lessons to be learned. So you've just spoken about something I've thought about a lot. We can't work in silos or isolated fashion. Whether the university feels that they're separate from the community, but it's not true. Like me, I'm 300 meters away from Tabaret. So this is a conversation that we need to have in the future, because it's impossible with the densification, with the community plan, that we can't feel that we're not part of these situations, because it happens in every neighborhood. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I'd like to add as well that maybe the police could be a bridge between the various communities. So we'd have to give some more thought to that. But I think you bring up a really good point. Thank you. Thank you very much, Councillor Plante.
Questions out here, so I'm asking if this item is carried.
Carried.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for the report, Director Gooding. We'll move now to item 5.2, the Bylaw and Regulatory Services 2025 Annual Report. I believe we're squeezing a little bit more paid time out of our Director, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. I'll hand it over to our Associate Director, Jake Gravel, to go through this morning's presentation.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for members of committee. I'd also like to thank all of the executive team and members of Bylaw Services for being here today. So to start, next slide, please. Bylaw and Regulatory Services is comprised of 232 budgeted full-time equivalents and is responsible for the enforcement and administration of more than 50 municipal bylaws, as well as provincial acts within the boundaries of the City of Ottawa. Bylaw and Regulatory Services operates 144 hours per week on a near 24-hour service model and strives to provide a level of performance that meets the expectation of the residents and visitors to Ottawa. In addition to its normal day-to-day operations, Bylaw and Regulatory Services provides enforcement supports to its city partners, which include Infrastructure and Water Services Department, Recreation, Culture and Facilities Services Department, Office of Emergency Management, and Ottawa Public Health, among others. In 2025, Bylaw Services received 108,699 service requests, representing an increase of 10% over 2024. Next slide, please. Can I get you to back up one slide, please? Changes to Bylaw and Regulatory Services organizational structure. I apologize. I'll get you to forward that once. Thank you. During 2025, Bylaw and Regulatory Services implemented several key changes to its organizational structure to better align with operational needs and legislative developments. These changes include the creation of a new property standards and zoning enforcement branch in March of 2025, the creation of a new operational training and compliance branch in December of 2025, the closure of the automated enforcement services branch in November of 2025, following the provincial government's legislated dissolution of speed enforcement cameras. As of December 2025, the 6 branches of Bylaw and Regulatory Services were the Bylaw Enforcement Services Branch, Licensing, Administration and Enforcement Branch, Operational Support and Regulatory Services Branch, Parking Enforcement Branch, Property Standards and Zoning Enforcement Branch, and the Operational Training and Compliance Branch, which are all overseen by the Director's Office. Next slide, please.
À un niveau plus détaillé, la direction de l'application des règlements municipaux est responsable de
This office is responsible for the general application of animal control and noise control, property norms, and zoning is a new specialized branch for property standards, property maintenance, and zoning enforcement. The Licensing, Administration, and Enforcement Branch is responsible for the administration and enforcement of business licensing, vehicle, taxis, limos, and private transportation, and short-term leases. There are ambassadors for different buildings and for lottery costs. The Parking Enforcement Branch is responsible for citywide enforcement of the traffic and parking bylaw. The Operational Support and Regulatory Service Branch is responsible for general administration, as well as the sterilization clinic. That was the Operational Training Compliance Branch as well, created in 2025. It provides centralized oversight for all training activities to ensure consistency and compliance. It includes onboarding for staff by ensuring planning and management for operational, specialized operational needs under the Director's Office, which is responsible for decision-making, strategic planning, and providing subject matter expertise, and acting as an information broker for the municipal services.
The work of bylaw and regulatory services falls into two broad categories: responding to service requests which are assigned on a priority level based on call type, and other work activities which do not have service requests created. Examples of work activities which do not have an associated service request include proactive enforcement patrols, court time, and administrative work. In accordance with the recommendations of the Bylaw and Regulatory Services Review, Bylaw and Regulatory Services has implemented the following service standards. For Priority 1 calls, Bylaw and Regulatory Services will respond within 24 hours, 80% of the time. For Priority 2 calls, Bylaw and Regulatory Services will respond within 48 hours, 80% of the time. And for Priority 3 calls, Bylaw and Regulatory Services will respond within 96 hours, 80% of the time. Next slide, please. In 2024, Bylaw and Regulatory Services handled 98,487 service requests, and we exceeded the 80% service standard for Priority 1, 2, and 3 calls by 18%, 7%, and 12% respectively. In 2025, Bylaw and Regulatory Services handled 108,609 service requests, and we exceeded the 80% service standard for Priority 1, 2, and 3. It is important to note that the data presented reflects service standards for initial response to service requests and not resolution, as many service requests require investigation, appeal period, and other actions before resolution is achieved. The data also does not reflect requests for information received through various channels other than 311. Next slide, please.
L'année 2025 est considérée comme une année de réussite pour les services de règlement municipaux.
We could say that 2025 was a successful year for our office. Specifically, we achieved the phase 1 of the retrofit project for the BLRS. This was completed, delivering an accessible, modernized business licensing center that meets IOTA and cash handling standards. This allowed us to reconfigure the entry with an access ramp, modernizing the client service counter, and to add a universal washrooms, and to have a new meeting room. The project also let us have a new meeting room for the parking control team and to modernize the showers, gym, and dressing rooms. It opened its doors to the public in January 2026. The handheld ticketing technology replacement, which was launched in June 2025, and this consisted in acquiring and implementing a new parking ticket management solution, as well as handheld equipment for the Bylaw and Regulatory Services team, aligning the city's transition to a parking administrative penalty system while making the first line teams more effective and the systems more dependable. And thirdly, the service standards, thanks to rigorous planning and targeted strategies to reduce call volumes and the approval of that were implemented across 2025, the BLRS exceeded its service standards benchmarks for the second year in a row.
Looking ahead, the long-awaited online businesses licensing solution, which is a council's strategic objective, is expected to launch in the third quarter of 2026, crafting a one-stop shop to enhance client experience, reducing barriers for entrepreneurs, and position Ottawa as a top destination for businesses. This year, Bylaw and Regulatory Services is creating a West deployment model, which will see property standards officers stationed at a 100 Constellation. This model will allow for a quicker response to service requests in the west end of the city and create efficiencies by reducing mileage and gas usage. This new model will allow for the reduction in cost for phase 2 of the Bylaw and Regulatory Services headquarter retrofit. The retrofit will see accessible office space and a modernized dispatch center at 735 Industrial. BLRS continues to invest in staff by utilizing the new dedicated training center at 100 Constellation and by expanding its training program. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have any speakers for this item nor written submissions. Are there any comments or questions from my colleagues? Seeing none, is this item? Yes.
Sorry.
Councillor Devine.
Hello. One question I wanted to ask. So I was appreciative, certainly, of not just the report, the information we get now, but the information we get from Bylaw quarterly, where we get to observe what are the trends in any given ward. And I am always interested in talking on KPIs and performance metrics. I'm happy to see in the report there that when you quantify between your priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, that we're meeting our response time standards at like 98, 97%, something to that effect. In the staff report, there was a mention that this year we responded to something in the effect of 108,000 calls, and that was a 10% increase from last year. And I got clarity from the general manager, where I wanted to ask, can I get clarity if we are responding to 108,000 calls, how many calls are we getting? And he was saying, oh, it's 108,000. So I was glad to see that. That, of course, indicates something in the realm of 100% response rate. What I want to get clarity on is, do we have KPIs? How do we measure unresolved issues? This is not necessarily a bylaw thing. It might be a bit of a 311 issue, but I can't tell you about the massive discrepancy between how 311 might list something as resolved, but the resident on the phone will say, how is that resolved? That's not resolved at all. So can I just ask broadly and generally, when we talk about 100% response rate or something in that effect, so broadly and generally, does response equal resolved? That's my first broad question.
Thank you. Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. When we talk about initial response, that's the initial response for the officer to open that call. It may not mean resolution in some cases. For example, a property standards zoning complaint may take much longer than, say, a barking dog complaint to resolve. But we do monitor through our monthly dashboards these open and close for a time to open a case and close a case. So we do closely monitor the resolution time as well through monthly reports.
Okay, because we're getting good data on the response rate, and you're defining response rate as opening the call. You mentioned the term close. It's almost akin to a salesperson saying, my response rate was fantastic. I allowed so many customers in the door. I only closed on 10% of the deals. That's what ultimately matters, the close rate. So can you give me information on if we are good at tracking our response rate? We picked up the call, we got the email and opened a file. Do we have accurate KPIs? Do we track closing files, resolving files? And I know that sometimes the resolution may be, we can't fix this. This is not our issue. This is something out of our hands. This is a different level of government. But what I'm looking for is, how do we track information so that at the very least, the resident on the end of the phone isn't emailing me saying, what's happening? Because nothing's happening from my end. So how do we report on closing and or resolving?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. Mr. Chair. And again, through these monthly dashboards, we are monitoring those closing, and we are looking at actually all of our calls are closed in the end. If there's a resolution that we can deal with through the actual bylaw enforcement, or it's referred to another agency, but that is resolution if we've referred it to another agency.
And I agree that closing and resolving are not the same thing. If you are monitoring that, does that mean that currently of the 2025 or 2024 request rate, which we are tracking the response rate, do we have close and or response rates for those 2 years?
If I can, Chair, just to add some context to that. So, I mean, the dashboards are very valuable for us. I mean, we are monitoring officers' performance based on times to close, but we're also monitoring, days in a month that the officer is actually working. So we track the vacation time, the sick leave and things, and we extract that data from those overall statistics that we're monitoring to see what the call volume is. So how many calls an officer is dealing with per hour, per shift, and then how long it takes them to actually close those calls. The complexity to this is really that in some cases, there are restrictions to how quickly we can close a case. For example, a property standards call where we issue an order, it's a minimum 19 days for compliance, right? So that's going to extend the time to close that call. But we do monitor that, and we know that, so we try and, 30 days is our standard for a property standards call. As you know, I mean, we've all had discussions about property standards calls that take much longer than that. And sometimes it's because we've had to issue a charge. They've appealed. So we have a court hearing that's coming up. That sometimes delays the resolution process. They may appeal the order, which means that we got to set up an appeal date to go to committee. Sometimes committee gives an extension to that order that can delay the process in closing. So we can report on how long it takes to close calls, but I just want to caution that that's very difficult because every case is different. So, a barking dog call, as Jake alluded to, those are easy. I mean, it's not always easy, but you know what I mean? It's the officer attends and does the initial response, and often the case is closed, the same day.
I agree. I don't think anybody here would argue with the fact that the complexity of what you deal with is impressive, and that there are such vagaries that something can be closed in 5 minutes. Some things, as you say, may take a long time to close. And I appreciate that you're monitoring this, but what I'm asking, and I haven't got an answer yet, is do you report on closing data? Whether that report involves some things closed, they took an average of X rate. Is there reporting to council on closing? Because closing means resolution. And for the residents' point of view, that's all that matters.
So, Mr. Chair, the answer to your question is no, we don't report on our quarterly reports on time to close a call.
But Chair, if I could just add here as well, what we've presented to committee this morning also shows our service standards, right? So we report back on, the number of calls that we receive, we also respond to, and then at what percentage of time are we able to meet those service standards for the service area. Another example that I just want to provide is more like a real world example, because I think it alludes to what you're talking about here, Councillor. You get a call that there's a car parked illegally in front of your house. We get that call, we go to the house, well, the car's not there anymore, it's left. So we close that call, right? So that's 100%. Closed call, received the call, attended, it's no longer there. But Roger and Jake and the team, they have that data now, right? So they're able to analyze the trends throughout the city to say, okay, even though that resident who made the call might not feel like it's been resolved because there was an illegally parked car in front of their house and there was no ticket that might have been issued to that vehicle. Whereas in some cases, when we arrive and the vehicle is still there, then Bylaw and the team will take whatever appropriate measures might be necessary. But if the vehicle is gone, that resident might not feel that it's been resolved, right? So because we haven't issued a fine, right? So the vehicle is gone, we received the call, attended, and the vehicle is gone, and we haven't resolved it from their perspective. That said, those calls are important to us because we now have that data to say, okay, now on this street, we're starting to see a trend emerging here where a number of calls are coming in for this specific area in the city, and that helps inform Roger and Jake and the team in terms of their deployment planning for where their resources go throughout the city.
Again, I appreciate our response time, whether with bylaw or paramedics or fire. The fact that we are always close to, if not surpassing, our standards or national standards on response time is laudable. To your point about the car outside the window that's illegally parked, if I'm a resident and I file a request, if I file a 311 thing because there's a car illegally parked, if you respond and you investigate, and if the car is no longer there and you mark that as closed, and the resident sees that on 311 closed, and they look out the window, the car's gone, they'll think bylaw did its job. They might not know what happened. But if that car is still there, and for whatever reason, you still mark that as closed, and the resident looks at the window, they're not seeing resolution. They're wondering, why is it marked as closed? And so again, I appreciate response time completely. All I'm saying is I think there might be value in a conversation at some point where we report back to council on closing, because closing means resolution, which to the resident is all that matters to a degree. Maybe not today, but I appreciate having a conversation in the near future. I've taken up a lot of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Devine. Councillor Skalski.
Hi, and thank you again for the report. This is great. I did have a couple of questions. So I noted the 263% increase in illegal dumping calls that were reported here. And I think we see in rural Ottawa a real noticeable increase in dumping in rural ditches. So this is something that I'm hearing folks talk about often, and specifically, or maybe tied to the 3-item limit, like there's sort of a notional connection there. I'm wondering though, if you have any more granulated, like, do you collect more granular data about where these calls are coming from in the community? And can we say that this is, something that is truly like maybe disproportionately impacting rural, or is this dumping everywhere, just from a sense of the calls that you're receiving? So question about, do we know where these calls are coming from? And then I am also curious about, the connection between your team and talking within the city, like, you've observed certain things, what's working, what's not, and how you're working with the city on that to convey that to other departments.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, we are aware of hotspots for dumping, and we deploy our resources accordingly, proactively at times for these hotspots to try to resolve these issues in areas where dumping is a problem. So we are aware of problematic areas for dumping. And sorry, if I can just get you to repeat your second question.
Yeah, so I was asking, well, my first question was whether do we actually know where the calls are coming from? So it was more about the call data, because there was an increase of call data, 263% increase in illegal dumping calls. So I was curious, and it didn't say though where those calls were coming from. So it was maybe more of a, do we actually know, do you guys collect that?
Thank you for clarifying. And we do collect that data as to, if it's coming from internal departments or if it's coming from residents.
Okay, so we don't know geographically within the city where those calls are coming from per se.
But we do also track the geographical location as well as the source of the complaint.
Okay, so we could ask that maybe outside of this forum, and we would be able to know how many calls are coming from our areas related to dumping relative to other areas in town.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. And my second part was, if you're observing things about the way a bylaw is playing out in practice, how you're working within the city to convey that back to the program areas that develop that bylaw in the first place, to make sure that, there's a good loop of, feedback that's then informing the next review. So I'm just curious, we didn't get into that in the report, but I'm curious just operationally how that works.
Thank you, Councillor. And through you, Mr. Chair, we're always working within our internal partners to address this. When we see that there are problems, there's always open communication between Public Works, between solid waste, to make sure that everybody is aware of these challenges that, or these complaints that are continuing to come in.
Thank you for that. Okay, and then just one last question it's around the comment around proactive deployment. So I think, I often hear that, I remember even hearing during our budget time, that we don't really have the capacity for proactive. So proactive becomes like when there is time and space to be proactive, we be proactive, but our focus is really on responding to the service requests. And so I just think that it would be really helpful in a future report even to include what exactly, the proactive work looks like operationally, how you decide where you're going to deploy resources. Is it based entirely on, like, similar in the police world where they say it's data informed deployment. And so you're looking for a lot of calls on a particular thing and that's what's sending you out. Or are you kind of doing a geographic deployment where you're hitting a community and just sort of circling the block and covering a whole bunch of different possibilities? So it could be, it could be related to property standards. It could be related to something else. I think the concept of proactive deployment means different things to different people. And I think it would be very helpful to have that spelled out a bit more in the report.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Skalski. Councillor Desroches.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start by extending my thanks and appreciation and congratulations to Mr. Chapman for your dedication and service to the city. You lead the complaints department at the City of Ottawa, and that is a very, very daunting and challenging jobs. And I've seen you in so many situations respond to what are conflict situation between people, between neighbors, in situations involving some very non-compliant situations. And you've always done so with very sound judgment and I think a sensible approach to trying to resolve some of the complaints and issues that have come up over the many decades you've served this city and the city of Nepean before that. Normally I would bring up just serving the new growth areas and ensuring that there's timely response to complaints. It was referenced earlier that there's frustration when there's a complaint and then Bylaw appears on the scene and the issue is kind of disappeared, right? So I hope you'll continue to make sure through the budget process that we're responding to the new growth areas where we do get a significant number of calls and an increasing number. One of the issues that I've consistently raised, it's not winter, but it's coordination with the plows and following the plows where there are vehicles that are not respecting the ban or no, what's the other way around? Preceding the plow, right? Where you've seen it, right? Like the people are versus after the plow, people are doing the driveway and the car wasn't on the road. You can tell they weren't because the windrow is not there and they're frustrated. Technically, the ban's still in place. Technically, they're in non-compliance, but they're just clearing out their driveway, right? How can we not coordinate that? You're ahead of the plow. Those people are clearly in non-compliance. We know where the plows are going, and that's where you put your resources. So you can say you're clearly impeding the situation because the plow is imminently arriving versus at the end of it, where I think you're getting people that were really are not a problem. And I know staff will say, well, we might go out a second run. Yeah, the second run's going to be like 2 days from now, potentially. So I think there's opportunity to better coordinate that. So we're focusing on the people that are truly in the way. And you see them in the way too. The windrow is right around their car. Like they should be busted 100%, not the person that the plow's gone through. And it's just a technicality that the ban is still in place. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Desroches. Councillor Johnson.
That was a question, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. This has come up many a times before, and the discussions with Public Works, and I mean, Jay can speak to this as well. It's their standards are, often when we go by, the plow's been by. Yeah, the car we ticketed, it might not have a windrow around it, but 3 doors down, there's a car there with a windrow around it, or the car has now been removed and we're left with just the windrow. So it's often not a couple days later they come by. They'll come by and do a cleanup route during the parking ban because they know that cars are going to move off the street, even though the plows had to go around them. So, and we get the calls because the plow can't get down the street. So then residents are upset because that plow can't get down the street because now all the cars have moved out on the street. What I will say to the point that you've made about people clearing their driveways, officers are trained to do a check. I mean, if somebody, if there's no snow on the vehicle, it's, everything's melted and obviously that car has, been started and warmed up in the last little while, or often they're still running on the, the engine's still running on the street while they're clearing out the driveway. The officers do look to see if there's anybody outside clearing the driveway. We often get calls after people say, well, I was outside clearing my driveway. Well, the officer's notes show that nobody was outside doing, well, I ran inside to put my winter boots on. I just got home from work. Well, I mean, the answer to that is, I mean, I know that you have to clean out your driveway, and it's, yes, if you park your car on the street and the officer shows up and sees that you're clearing out your driveway, you're likely not going to get a ticket. It's the people that park their cars on the street because they think the plow's gone by and it's not coming back. But But I appreciate that there is a concern about, you know, once a street's been done, should people be able to park on the street? And we tried to, you know, define those through, you know, the parking ban and the hours that those parking bans are on. And I think that, you know, Public Works making those decisions on how long the ban has to be on for is, you know, our job is just to go around and ticket the cars that are on the street. But again, using some discretion and making sure that, you know, those vehicles have been parked on the street for some time.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll let you off easy today on this one because it's you're retiring, but I will continue to raise it that that discretion needs to come, right? And Public Works needs to be working really closely with you because often when the ban ends, oh, the downtown's done, the suburbs are not done yet, but we've ended the ban because there's a greater need to get the parking re-enabled in the core, right? And so that's where we run into these situations. Technically, the ban's been lifted, but again, it's I think better coordination through Public Works. Last question is, it's that time of year where, especially in the new growth areas, we have you know, the flowers blooming and what have you, but we also have just the complete proliferation of illegal marketing signs, and I want to give you some examples of those. So they are landscaping signs. We're going to talk about that later today. Carpet companies, painting companies, aeration companies, lawn care companies, pesticide and herbicide companies, you name it. They're on mailboxes, locations. They are at intersections. They are attached to light posts. They are attached to stop signs. They are illegal and they are a blight on our communities. And these companies are targeting these new growth areas because that's what people are doing. They're moving into their new homes and they have these typical needs. And with all the advertising opportunities that we have in this society right now, they're not really necessary, right? There's even signs that have that they're a member of the Better Business Bureau on their sign and they have an illegal sign. Like, it doesn't make sense. So what are we doing to get out there and start to do a sweep on these and less relying on residents who are busy with their lives, and maybe it's not as much as a preoccupation that I'm making it right now, but they just don't have time to report it. So can we at least go out there and make some dents in this? Because I'm sure you'll hear it from other councillors who have a similar kind of composition that this is the time of year where they just pop up all over the place.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Chair, we're gearing up right now for our busy season as spring and summer is upon us. This is one of those situations where proactive enforcement is, we do proceed with proactive enforcement, and we rely on a robust student program over the summer. And we do have students that are specifically assigned to signs over the summer to patrol and remove these signs and deal with the defendants if we can actually track them down.
Good to hear, and I appreciate that effort, and so does the community. And again, some of them seem innocuous, but having them non-stop signs and what have you is a safety consideration. Thank you. That's all, Chair. Now.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ross and Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. And yes, thank you to Director Chapman for all that you've done. We've only been able to work together for 4 years, but I do have a concern about where the Nepean files go that are in your head. Yes. Is there a place that you've transferred that to? Because you know, your history of the city of Nepean has really been helpful in a lot of ways, especially as a new councillor coming in. So can you just confirm for me that there's been some kind of like metaphysical transfer or perhaps detailed files, hard copies somewhere for the city of Nepean?
Mr. Chair, Councillor, thank you for the question. And yes, we still have many senior staff that are around that would understand the Nepean files as well. And we've tried to download as much information as we can over the last year. So, you know, hopefully I'm still around. If you need to call me, I'll be available.
Oh, is your family still here hearing you say that? I don't think so. Yeah. So with respect to, you know, the city of Nepean, I noticed that there's a conversation in the report about creating a West deployment model for property standards at 100 Constellation. Was there a pressure there that you're seeing in the West End that moving this over will resolve, or was it a matter of using your resources effectively for building assets?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Chair, with the closure of the automated speed enforcement branch, we had space available at 100 Constellation, and we repurposed that space because we knew there was a need to try to be more efficient in the West End with the deployment out of 735 Industrial, and deploying officers out of 100 Constellation would benefit the West End.
Okay, very good. I'm glad to see it. I think that is wise. This might not be a question for this particular committee, but I do wonder, have you been able to have that conversation in tandem with the Algonquin secondary plan and some of the future resourcing for that building? Because the idea of parking spaces is pretty spicy amongst departments as they're fighting for spots at 100 Constellation and when we want to develop the property.
Thank you, Councillor. And through you, Mr. Chair, we are currently having conversations with facilities. 100 Constellation may not be the permanent location for us in the West End. We are looking at all options, but we have that space currently, and we continue to have those conversations about parking and space.
Okay, very good. And so I guess finally, when it comes to, again, property standards in the West End, you know, we know that fees and so on have and permits have a cost recovery model, but I do wonder when you're facing repeat property standards offenses, what is the cost recovery model for your time when it comes to visiting those places over and over? Sometimes we have some problematic properties that see a lot of action. So can you just confirm for me how you're recovering your costs?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Chair. For these problematic properties where we seem to be sort of continuing to attend, we have implemented reinspection fees. So officers, after they've had to return to a property over and over, we will apply a reinspection fee of a $250 fee, and we will continue to apply those fees if compliance has not been achieved, and we have to continue to spend resources on that property.
So I was kind of being cute by using the problematic property, but did I just trip into your official problematic property list versus just general problematic properties? Does that fee apply for folks that aren't identified through the special process?
When I say a problematic property, I mean in general. So not referring to the pilot itself, but these fees are applied to sort of addresses that we have to return to often.
Okay, very good. That will instill many of my residents with confidence. And thank you again for your service, Director Chapman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Johnson. I see no other questions. The recommendation reads that the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee recommend Council receive the Bylaw and Regulatory Service 2025 Annual Report for information. Is this item carried?
Carried.
Thank you very much. It's carried. We'll move now to item 7.1, a motion of which notice has previously been given from Councillor Devine on behalf of Councillor Menard regarding Ottawa's noise bylaw and consistency with MPC 300 environmental noise guideline. I'll turn it over to Councillor Devine to introduce.
Thank you, Chair. And if you'll just give me a moment to get, I don't have a hard copy of it. I'm just going to try to get it up on my screen, or is it on the screen itself? I will gladly read it in, but I don't have it in front of me at the moment.
I've got it here, Chair, if you want.
But you have it?
Yeah, you want it?
Oh, I have it. Thank you very much. All right. Thank you. Whereas the City of Ottawa's bylaw review work plan identified, do I have to read the entire whereas clauses or just the operative? We read this in the last meeting. Can I just go to the operative clauses? Thank you. There's only one. Great. Therefore, be it resolved that staff include a review of the noise bylaw, including any disparities with the recommendations of the NPC 300 guideline as an item for consideration as part of the development of the bylaw review work plan to be approved by the next term of council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any introductory comments you wish to make, Councillor Devine?
I believe we were going to go to delegations first, but when it does come to speaking to it, I'm more than willing to cede to my colleague whose motion it is.
Yeah, no problem. Councillor Menard, if you have a couple of sentences you'd like to introduce.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. Thank you, Chair. The main thrust of the motion is about aligning our bylaw work with provincial guidelines that our planning department also adheres to through their site plan work, and ensuring that that our bylaw officers have the ability to utilize those provincial guidelines and the existing planning team's work to ensure that we've got I guess more accountability when it comes to noise in our city. We're seeing some larger buildings go up that aren't taking this into account. Most are doing this, but some are not. And in this case, we've got a lot of effect for our residents. In my case, there's over 100 residents that are affected directly. And in other wards, I know this is having an effect too with other buildings. So it's been an issue for some time now. And as we see more development, which we want in the city, we need to make sure that we're taking into account the provincial guidelines, our work of planning committee, and bylaws. Good work as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Menard. We have, I believe, 5 delegations for this item, and we will start with Caroline Richter. If she's in the room, come on up to the front table. Welcome, Caroline. You have 5 minutes to make your delegation.
I'm speaking before you today to request that the Ottawa Noise Bylaw be updated to be consistent with the Provincial Environmental Noise Guideline. This would ensure building plans are reviewed to confirm the planning process includes standardized noise assessment criteria regarding incessant penetrating noise and ensure new builds do not create an uncomfortable and unhealthy living environment for their neighbors. In August of 2024, the Talisman received its first new tenants. As a result, the rooftop coolers fired up and Thames Street became a wall of noise that penetrates the barriers of our homes and into our yards 24/7 at least 6 months of the year. This makes outdoor living uncomfortable and restful sleep impossible. As a result, I have developed frequent headaches, a sleep disorder, and I have difficulty concentrating. I tried using industrial-grade earplugs in an attempt to block the noise so that I could sleep. They have no effect. I have since learned that low-frequency noise travels far and penetrates the walls of buildings. Friends and colleagues rarely visit during the warmer summer season, as many complain of nausea and feel sick at my home. Bylaw has been unable to help as the city's noise bylaw does not recognize the nature of tonal low-frequency noise. When I first became aware of the noise, I went directly to the Talisman and asked why barriers were installed on the north, west, and east-facing sides, but were missing from the south-facing neighborhood side. The site supervisor told me they could do something to redirect the noise, but they would do it only at the city's request. I contacted Bylaw, who did their first reading on September 3rd, 2024. Readings consistently showed well above the 50 decibel limit in 2024 and 2025. On a particularly quiet summer afternoon on a Sunday, the noise was so loud that the Bylaw officer said they could hear it blocks away. I could hear it as I approached the experimental farm at Fisher. I was assured a fine would be levied and the issue resolved. Subsequently, this officer was removed from the case and another officer assigned who told me he could not hear anything and dismissed my complaint. The absence of a noise bylaw that addresses the unique nature of this noise gave license to some bylaw officers to suggest I may be imagining the noise or be overly sensitive. I've never been treated so poorly and made to feel so small. In desperation, I contacted a local acoustics authority, State of the Art Acoustic, who explained that these issues must be resolved at the source of the noise and work must be done on or around the problematic chiller rather than at your home. Included in this email, a 2016 Ottawa Vanier newsletter describes a similar situation that was eventually resolved. This was an opportunity to update the city noise bylaw. We should not be in this position 10 years later and starting our 3rd season of suffering when a precedent was set 10 years ago. I sent a copy of the newsletter to Councillor Brockington along with the message from State of the Art Acoustic. Also included is a link to a very similar situation involving a constant rattle and total hum emitted from a high-rise condominium chiller in Toronto. The issue was studied and resolved retroactively. In this case, Toronto bylaw was able to impose a forced action. Clearly, Ottawa's noise bylaw must be updated. After living in my home for over 30 years, last summer I put my beloved home up for sale. I was terrified as I did not know where I was going. I have a sight disorder that may cause me to lose the ability to drive. The location of my home is perfect for someone who cannot drive. I can walk to the grocery stores, pharmacies, parks, Kitchissippi Mikan, where I enjoy the cross-country ski trails. Here I can live with poor eyesight and without a car, should this time come. My house did not sell. Who would choose to live here in these conditions? I don't want to move, and I should not have to move because the city's planning is incomplete and noise bylaw is insufficient. Finally, to put it into perspective, it sounds similar to a biplane flying over my house 24/7. Late last fall, when the rooftop cooling system was off, I took a noise reading on my front porch when the leaves were rustling in the breeze. The reading was over 70 decibels, yet it did not bother me, nor did it penetrate my home. Again, it is the nature of the low-frequency tonal noise that must be taken into account in the noise bylaw. I implore you to hire an independent, unbiased acoustics consultant to study the sound being emitted by the rooftop cooling system and garage ventilation units at the Talisman and Clemo so that an effective solution can be installed and the noise bylaw updated appropriately and transparently enforced. Please expedite this process so that we can enjoy the warmer season again. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you very much, Caroline. And you have a question from Councillor Plante.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I hope you can also enjoy the summer in where you are. I agree with you about living downtown. It certainly does have its benefits about being able to walk everywhere. And that's one of the reasons why we live here as well. But I just wanted to know a little more information, and I apologize if I missed something. What was settled in the Ottawa Vanier area? You mentioned that there was something resolved, and I was wondering what that was. Is that the Robinson Road noise?
It was in 2016.
Okay.
I'd have to look back in my records. I might have it
No,
in here.
well, we can talk. I'll come
Yeah.
see you later and we can have a chat about it. I'd just be curious to know what building it was and what remediation was done. We had a similar, I don't know if you know Robinson Road. It's kind of tucked away in the Sandy Hill area. They had an issue, a very similar issue with I believe a Smart Living, smiles on my face, building. They resolved it sort of internally within the neighborhood. They got the company to change whatever heating cooling system was causing that noise, but I'll come see you when you go sit down. If you don't mind, we could have a look at it together. I would appreciate it.
Certainly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Plante. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for your delegation today, Caroline. And Neil Pearson, on behalf of the Glebe neighborhood. Thank you for joining us today. And you have 5 minutes for your delegation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. We submitted 2 documents to the committee, a presentation and a technical brief. I won't repeat what's in them. I want to make 3 points within the context of these documents that explain why this motion matters now. First point, urban intensification, tall buildings and architectural response. Ottawa is approving high-rise residential building at a pace. This is in line with the city's urban intensification strategy. Because of their heights, these new buildings require significant cooling capacity, and increasingly that means rooftop adiabatic cooling units, large multi-fan industrial equipment that produces tonal noise. That's not a theory, it's a documented characteristic of this new technology. The problem is straightforward. The city is not consistently requiring stationary noise assessments as a condition of site plan approval for buildings with such rooftop cooling equipment. Where assessments do exist, they do not include the NPC 104 tonal penalty, a mandatory 5 dB adjustment under the province's own NPC 300 standard. And where they don't exist at all, buildings are being approved and occupied with no assessment of rooftop noise impact whatsoever. The Talisman on Carling, in the chair's own ward, in respect to phase 1, has an identical adiabatic cooling unit on its roof, and that's been confirmed. There appears to be no stationary noise assessment or conditions in the approval to address it. In parallel, there are no enforcement mechanisms to noise complaints that arose last summer either. There are approximately 230 site plan control applications before the city right now. We don't know how many involve this type of rooftop cooling equipment, as it's difficult to track as a community. That's one gap I think this motion should seek to close. My second point, Ottawa's opportunity from peer review. Toronto and Hamilton have already enshrined 45 dBA on its nighttime limit for stationary noise sources directly in their bylaws. Ottawa has not. Ottawa's bylaw sets a single 50 dBA threshold with no time of day distinction. The 45 dBA nighttime limit exists in the Environmental Noise Control Guidelines, which Bylaw Regulatory Services has no authority to enforce. Waterloo have embraced tonal noise under NPC 104. Ottawa's own enforcement officers are using broadband meters that cannot detect tonal noise. And thanks to Head of Planning, Mr. Chapman, who we met, he confirmed this directly to the community in November of 2025. And we thank you for your integrity on that, sir. The current framework is measuring the wrong thing against the wrong standard and the wrong equipment. Final point, the motion closes the gap. I want to be clear about how this motion does and doesn't, what it does and doesn't do. NPC 300 and NPC 104 are existing provincial standards. The motion asks the city to enforce what the province already requires. It does not affect outdoor events, concerts. Those are governed separately under the special events bylaw. It does not impose new costs on developers. Acoustic consultants already should be applying these standards. It closes the gap between what the city's planning guidelines require and what bylaw can then actually enforce. The situation at the Clemo, we have 100+ properties that have been affected for one summer and the next is upon us. The developer stationary noise study is yet to be finalized and the city's own measuring equipment cannot detect the type of noise being produced because it's tonal. This should not go forward as a template for the city, how the city manages noise and high-rise developments moving forward. In closing, our specific asks. The committee has our documents. We're happy to answer any questions. We ask the city chair and the city manager to do 4 things. Update the city's own environmental noise control guidelines, EHCG, to require additional tonal noise assessment under NPC 104 in all stationary noise studies submitted under site plan control where such situations arise. Enshrine the NPC 300 nighttime limit for 45 dBA for stationary sources explicitly in the noise bylaw so that bylaw has a clear enforcement basis to work within. Updated delegated authority report templates and site plan control agreements to reference current NPC 3 standards and definitions and remove references to NPC 216, which have no regard to these type of new cooling systems. That standard is narrow and it relates to just air conditioning devices. And finally, require post-installation field assessment and PN certification of stationary noise compliance as a condition of occupancy so that with developments with a similar rooftop, tonal noise can be assessed. These are not new rules. They close the gap between what the province already requires and what the city can enforce. Thank you for your time this morning. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Neil. You have a couple of questions. First, Councillor Menard.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, Neil, for being here and for all the research that you've done into this. Obviously, it's extensive. And we visited this site together. I know Officer Gravel has been there too.
Yeah.
It is a bizarre sound. So it was like a hum or a helicopter that varies in frequency depending on how those fans are blowing and where you are specifically. It's a real issue. The talisman is the same when you're there. I just on the tonal noise piece. I guess can you just describe a bit more what that is, why it's different, why this is not detected by our bylaw? I'll certainly ask them in the future, but what's the difference here between a regular old noise standard?
Yeah, I think the best way to sum it up technically is there's what's called broadband noise and narrowband noise. Broadband noise is typically picked up by the current measuring devices of the city. Narrowband noise does not, because it's relating to the tonal fan speed that's happening within the actual units themselves that creates this kind of blade noise that sounds like a whining drone or something, and you can hear it. And what is because it's low noise, it's projected much more further. So that's one of the challenges that we've had. It's not just coming 250 meters from the Clemo, in our case, it's actually going further. So it's actually going 500, 600 meters into the avenues in the glebe.
Thank you for that. And you mentioned this is not something that would slow down development approvals. Obviously, there's a standard that we would apply during site plan. It's not something that would apply to the outdoor events, which have their own special events bylaw, their own permitting system. I guess on the in the Talisman in Ward 16, you mentioned a type of cooling unit that was there. Can you just describe a little bit more why that particular type of cooling unit is a problem and why it might be more of a problem in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, if we look towards intensification, you've got a lot of tall buildings going up in your respective wards. With those tall buildings comes the fact that you need to cool the occupants during our spring to summer months. The systems they're putting on the roofs are not your average air conditioning units. They have to deal with the capacity of the occupants, which is large. So they are bringing in these adiabatic coolers, which are they are industrial units, not seen on residential rooftops before. We're not actually seeing what's going on the plans when these new proposals and site plan control come in. They are dealt with later, and we've been told that by area planning that actually we look at that later on down the line. To me, that's the wrong way around. We should be looking at these things first, and we should be looking at a process to ask ourselves, is this an adiabatic cooler, or is it of a similar type to an adiabatic cooler? If so, we need to know the make and the model, and then we need to put conditions in place, which we already have through MPC 300 and MPC 104, so that we don't get in a situation where the bylaw team is having to run around the city for lots of complaints, which actually can be resolved by the planning process in closing that planning gap.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Devine.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering, because we're hearing a lot from the residents in and around the area, are there the similar complaints from the residents who are living in the building? Like, are they hearing the same thing you are, or what's that situation like?
We haven't heard that yet. We're obviously hearing it more from people in the neighborhood. And again, it's how the noise is pushed. Obviously, the adiabatic units we're talking about are actually facing the east side into Bronson, so they push straight into the avenues. And I think with the case of the Talisman, it's pushing straight into Thames Avenue, which is the same adiabatic cooler. So you're getting tonal noise and you're getting this persistent kind of reverberation. But we're not hearing it from obviously people in the building, because in a noise curve sense, it kind of goes off the edge of the building. And so people shouldn't hear it unless people in the top floors are actually hearing these noises. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Plante. Councillor Devine.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for your very, very insightful and useful delegation. It's too bad my colleague, Councillor Johnson, is not in the room at the moment, because I would repeat a line I hear from her that is resonating today, where she often speaks to heeding and taking in the wisdom in the room. And one thing I love about these public committees is the benefit that we as councillors can glean from the expertise and insight of residents. So thank you very much for delegating. And although this is Councillor Menard's motion, I'm very, very appreciative and supportive of the motion, because although now we are really just speaking about some issues that affect the downtown urban wards, this very issue has been a thorn in my own ward with a couple particular buildings, and bylaw has simply not had the tools to enforce it in the way that they would like to. And so it does seem like what this motion is and what you're speaking to is what we as politicians always like to say is every tool in the toolbox. And that this is offering us, more tools in the toolbox. I'll have questions for staff, but just to confirm with you, also, I would love it very much if you can put a dot in between Sean and Devine and then put @ottawa.ca. I would love it if you would email me your comments. The two confirmations, did I hear you say that in other cities, and I think you said, for example, Hamilton, that there are different thresholds for decibel levels between day and night?
Yes, correct.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Did I also hear you say that in other cities that there are different kinds of decibel meters or other sound recording measuring devices that may be useful in making a proper diagnosis of a certain environmental context?
Yeah, correct. So part of my background is I'm a kind of former urban planner, so dealt with a lot of things in the United Kingdom. There are what's called narrow band analyzers, which will pick up tonal noise. So it would help bylaw solve these problems. The other challenge is if we had the acoustic engineers, and we've hired an acoustic engineer as the community, if the acoustic engineer actually applies the tonal penalty because they know it's a tonal problem from the adiabatic cooler, then obviously that would change the prediction plots that would allow city planning to decide whether it was impacting points of reception under NPC 300. And if that is the case, then it's a simple pass and fail. If they fail, they have to put some remediation in place to resolve that failure. And that's not what's been done. So we're going through that process at the moment with the owners of the Clemo, and we'll see where that ends, but we're hopeful.
Just to clarify, when I was asking, do other cities have different meters?
Yes.
And you said yes. As I understand it, because I don't think this is the first time that this room has heard this conversation, but is one thing that those other meters measure that our meters don't measure
Correct.
levels of bass?
Yes, they see the spike. The other meters see the spike, and then you know what that number is, and then you could add a penalty if it's tonal or 5 dBA.
All right, this may be a different thing, but at a previous committee, we were talking about how different meters may or may not be useful in measuring noise, for example, in a music venue. And so my point is, I think we're having many conversations about the possible need of a noise bylaw review. And this seems to be another example of a question where different tools in the toolbox can not only identify where problems are, but also possibly where problems are not. So thank you for your delegation. I look forward to your email. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor, and thank you for your delegation this morning. It's appreciated. We have Jim Lowe, followed by Robert Brinker, followed by Jeffrey Brown. And I believe Mr. Lowe is online. Is that correct? Mr. Lowe, are you there? We see you on the screen there. If you just unmute yourself.
There, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I apologize.
It's okay. Go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes.
Hi, again, my name is Jim Lowe. I live at 262 Powell in the Glebe, and I have resided at this address now for 30 years. This is our personal experience. We first discovered we had a noise issue at home in May of last year. I had wandered out onto the back deck with my lunch. I commented to my spouse, Larissa, that there must be an orange air ambulance helicopter coming into the Civic Hospital, as we could hear a distinct whirring sound coming from the west. We quickly realized that this wasn't the case, as the noise didn't abate. In subsequent discussions with other affected neighbors, we learned that the source of the noise was the rooftop units at the Clemo. Now, we all recognize that our choice to live in a central neighborhood comes with certain ambient sounds. The low drone of the Queensway, for example, is a constant, but muted. Fireworks or festival music is more intrusive, but short-lived. The problem with the Clemo, it is neither muted nor short-lived. It is omnipresent during the entire sitting outside season. The so-called backbreaker for us came when my mother was over for our first outdoor barbecue of the season. She wears a hearing aid, and within a few minutes of being seated, she informed us that she could not follow the conversation due to the constant, what she described as competing noise in the background. Again, the Clemo. For further reference, the noise emanating from the Clemo units dwarf the sporadic sounds coming from either of our direct neighbors' AC and heat pump units, which are no more than 10 meters away. The Clemo's rooftop units are nearly 500 meters away. We can actually hear the noise with our windows closed. Suffice to say, and as hyperbolic as it sounds, we ceased using our backyard deck altogether. My spouse then took it upon herself to contact the city to request that someone come and take noise level readings in our backyard. These requests occurred another 3 times, spanning 4 months in total, none of which were dignified with a visit. On the 3rd attempt, we were actually told that the case was closed. The last request, not even dignified with a response. An email to KTS, the property owners, not surprisingly, also went unanswered. Larissa also joined a neighborhood walkabout on the subject organized by Councillor Menard, which culminated with a group visit to our backyard. The opinion was consensual. The noise was at its zenith here, and one person even commented, Can you imagine how much worse it would be if you didn't have such a large canopy of trees in between? Now we thought some action. At this juncture, I am past the point of asking why any architect would design a building that would choose to direct sound towards the most densely populated area in the vicinity, rather than towards office towers to the west or the Queensway to the north. I see no real value in finding blame with either the city in its approval process or lack thereof, and or the engineering firms that suggested and or approved these units. I find it truly onerous that we are concentrated on technical policies that argue over decibel levels and how they are correctly measured or not measured, as in our case. I am completely disappointed that everyone's energies and resources are now focused on a lobbying effort to align provincial and municipal standards, which, while clearly required, at this juncture only serve to legitimize, at best, a deferral of a solution, or at worst, give an eventual technical denial for redress. I believe in community. I am not anti-development and believe in density. I also believe in being a good neighbor and doing the right thing. For the 30 years I've lived in this neighborhood, I have seen countless new buildings go up, commercial and residential, low, mid, and high rise, and none have been even remotely as intrusive. I find it incredulous that noise readings that, at best, bump right up against a maximum allowable threshold are considered okay.
1 minute.
Maximum. While I am not an engineer by definition, any less than optimum running condition of these units over time, such as worn bearings, blades out of true, etc., necessarily means that noise levels will further elevate. I don't have an exact number of affected residents who have lodged a complaint on this matter, but as with all such things, they represent but a fraction of those impacted. I know that they represent well over $1 million in annual property taxes paid and many multiples of that number in lost property value if this remains unresolved. They are owed more than lip service or denial based on technicalities. I have personally reached into my own pocket to help subsidize professional advice on this case, as have many others. And I am sure that their resolve and commitment to redress is as staunch as mine is if additional, more aggressive measures are required. I think I speak for most of them when I say that real, prompt, permanent, consequential, not minor sound abatement solutions are required without delay. I am hopeful, though skeptical, that the proposed remedial measures will solve the issue.
Mr. Lowe, that's your time. Your time has expired. 5 minutes are up. So I'm sorry to cut you off there, but thank you for your delegation. I'll just see, we do have a question from Councillor Menard, so we'll go straight to questions.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, Jim, for being here and I guess describing the experience on the ground. We're hearing from 100 residents of the same thing, and when you visit the those yards or that area, it's the same experience. Thanks for inviting us to your backyard as well. You mentioned at the end of your comments there about the remedial measures, and certainly that's the way we've been looking at it. Is there's the longer term, which is the noise bylaw, and an update to this piece around total noise and the NPC 301 and 104 or 300 and 104. But in the immediate, the push is to get a solution to this building as soon as possible. Now, this won't stop other buildings from going up. That's the bylaw in terms of going up and with the same type of equipment. That's the bylaw. That's the planning process. On the immediate solution, yeah, we've seen something come forward around the changing of the fan blades that still has some areas where if it's at 100%, that we're still going to see potential violations of that NPC 300. So I guess just what's your experience been with the building and that remedial action that's been proposed here, and what would you like to see instead?
Well, obviously, we haven't experienced as of yet what the remedial procedures impact will be. Part of how I was going to finish this exercise was to suggest that I'm hoping that there's been pressure to put a plan B in place that's at the ready, because I am skeptical that these remedial measures will work. Again, I can't emphasize it enough. If this was occasional, like my neighbor's AC units or heat pump units kick on and off, and you can hear them, but they're not obtrusive. The problem here is that it is constant. It never abates. It never stops. It's on 24/7. And like anything, once you hear it, you can't not hear it anymore. And as been said by several people here, including yourself, Mr. Menard, the sound is is almost helicopter-like. Our first hearing of it, that's what we thought it was. As ridiculous as that sounds, it was this thumping whir. And so again, that's why I'm skeptical that changing a fan blade is going to have a significant impact. I think it will be marginal at best.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I appreciate those comments, and certainly this is not a normal situation, and we do need to work to stop it. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Menard, and thank you, Mr. Lowe, for your delegation. It's appreciated. Mr. Brinker, you're next, and then we'll close delegations with Jeffrey Brown. Mr. Brinker, good to see you. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair and committee members. My name is Robert Brinker, Vice Chair of the Carleton Community Association. I'm asking you today to vote in favor of the motion before you to add the review of the noise bylaw to the work plan for the next term of council. This review should include meaningful consultation, including the FCA and directly affected community members. As a resident who is directly affected by the noise of the 1354 Carleton Avenue site, the Talisman, my submission today is about the impact it has on me as a community volunteer. Since the first heads-up of the Westgate redevelopment, including the Westgate secondary plan, which includes the Talisman site and the Talisman development itself over 10 years ago, I was a vocal advocate for these redevelopments along Carling Avenue and other sites in our neighborhood. Discussing this with every community member who couldn't climb the tree fast enough, trying to convince them that the positive impact of increased density would help to revitalize our neighborhood, including the Merivale Road as a main street. Now I have to apologize for asking them to support me in speaking up at the Planning and Housing Committee in favor of these projects. With the knowledge I have today, I have to warn communities and neighbors around developments of these unforeseen impacts. It will be more important going forward to have an updated bylaw with the growth projections we have today, directing large developments towards hubs and corridors. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Brinker, for your delegation. It's appreciated. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. And now I call Jeffrey Brown. Good morning, sir. If you just press the button there on the mic at the bottom, and you have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much to the committee. My name is Jeffrey Brown. I do not live in the area, either of the areas affected by the buildings that have been spoken about so far, the Talisman and the Clemo. Though I have had the experience of going to listen to these buildings and with the people who are affected directly by these sounds. I am not a sound expert, nor am I, as I said, a neighbor. But I stand here to support, I live in Bay Ward. I stand here to support members of the city in all wards because I see this as a future problem and citywide due to the developments that are planned for. And my purpose here is to support the revision of the sound levels and a reassessment of the types of sound and energy that are being emitted from modern building developments. I support the revision of the sound level limits such that the municipal and provincial levels are made equal. I also encourage the city to better inspect and improve mechanical installations so this problem does not become ongoing and affecting neighborhoods into the future. And I also would like to ask the developers themselves to be a little bit more responsive and concerned to the neighborhoods that they affect with these machines. And I will agree with everybody that has spoken so far. The sounds being emitted from these buildings are very, very concerning. You can feel them. It isn't a question of sound necessarily. This is energy, okay? And it's coming right through homes, into homes, and quite frankly, traveling very, very far distances. How this has become an issue, I do not know. The machines are different, maybe because the buildings are larger, but I live in a high-rise building, and I went into the enclosure where the mechanical systems exist. I can't hear anything, even as I lean against the shed. When I look at the buildings that are in question today, I see no noise obstruction. The one on the Talisman is only partially enclosed, and the enclosure you can see through. What exists, you can see right through it. I'm not sure that any enclosures, how they would work, but there aren't any existing. And all previous developments of high-rise buildings in this city have enclosures, and they don't emit any sounds that are above the ambient city noise generally. So the 50 dB limit certainly does not address the energy being emitted from these buildings, but I still think it's too high. 50 is quite high. The two buildings in question have similar deficiencies: unenclosed mechanical systems, unwillingness of the management to resolve the concerns of the neighbors, and the inability of the city to make them do so. Were these systems actually approved, inspected, and tested? Well, we don't know how well shielding alone will work, and we also know that it's very important that we take into consideration not just the level of the noise, but the type of energy being emitted. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for yours as well and for your delegation. I don't see any questions at this time, so thank you very much for coming down today. Colleagues, we now move into questions for staff, and I just want to remind you of what the motion before us says, that staff include a review of the noise bylaw, including any disparities with the recommendations of the NPC 300 guideline as an item for consideration as part of the development of the bylaw review work plan to be approved by the next term of council. So do you want to add it to the work plan or not is the question that we have to decide at this time. So questions for staff, starting with Councillor Menard and then Bradley.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Chair, and to the great delegations who have, I guess, highlighted this issue. How do we account for, or can we account, I guess, for tonal noise at this time? Is that something that we look at as part of our enforcement at this time, or is this something that we need to look at for the future?
Mr. Chair, Councillor, thank you for the question. I'll try not to get too technical here on how we measure sound, but I think there is a little bit of, just listening to the delegations, I think there's a little bit of confusion on how we take noise meter reading. So when a noise meter reading is taken and the number that shows up on the noise meter not necessarily, reflecting a violation, because what we really need to determine is what is the sound level coming from the source, so from that chiller unit. And the only way that we can do that is to have the chiller unit shut down so that we can take an ambient reading, have the chiller unit turn back on, and then take another reading. There's a formula that we work on, and then it comes to the determining what the actual level of noise is coming from that chiller unit. So, I mean, that takes some time to work through the formula and get those numbers. We have to coordinate with the property manager at the building to get the unit shut off and things like that. So, and it's true that, during the evening hours, overnight hours, the demand on the unit will reduce because of obviously getting cooler temperatures in the evening and overnight. So the demand would be reduced, and so would the noise level be reduced. So I think that's why you've heard today that there are other municipalities that have looked at, looking at a different sound level for nights and days. The other, what contributes to this as well is the ambient noise would be lower at night than it would be during the day. You don't have as much traffic on the roads. You don't have sprinklers going often. There's other things that contribute to the ambient noise. So I don't want to get too technical on that, but I just wanted to clarify that point. So to directly answer your question about the low frequency noise, our meters are not equipped to be able to measure low frequency noise. However, our bylaw does have a general provision, section 2, that includes low frequency noise. So it is something that we can enforce and will enforce. When we talk about the Clermont, we have had several meetings with property manager there. We've asked them to bring in a sound engineer to do some testing to see what is exactly contributing to the problem, because obviously we're not mechanical engineers. We don't understand necessarily what's causing the problem. We understand now that it is a combination of the condenser unit as well as maybe the pitch on the blades inside the fans. So those are things that they're addressing. We've had open communication with the property manager, and I think we've shared that with the community as well, understanding that we certainly want to keep the community updated on what's going on. I know it's we're taking some criticism about not doing this quick enough, but it does take some time, and there is some modifications that need to be done to the unit, and possibly even some barrier that needs to be, there's blankets and things like that that can be installed as well, but that has to be done through recommendations from the sound engineer. So they're following those directions closely from what the sound engineer, the recommendations that they're making. They made a commitment to us that before those chillers turn on this spring, early summer, they will have that work completed. So we'll go in and take more readings, and we'll ensure that they are in compliance. We've also got a commitment that the sound engineer will come back and take readings on the low frequency noise to make sure that whatever that humming noise is has been reduced to an acceptable level.
That's really appreciated. You mentioned on the lower frequency that we have this some ability within the bylaw. Our tools aren't necessarily all there and equipped. So how would you go about measuring that in this case? Would you procure some equipment to help with that, or how would you do that to enforce that piece of the bylaw?
Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor, for the question. First off, the meters that measure low frequency noise, they're very technical meters. They're very expensive, and our officers certainly are not trained or certified to be able to use that type of equipment. So there would have to be some training, probably some certification that's required for our officers. And then, the procurement of those expensive noise meters would have to be done. So, to be quite honest, and not to put any blame on anybody else, but I think, the development process, we've had some discussions with our colleagues in planning that, at site plan approval, we're putting these MPC 300 guidelines in their site plan approval, but, as we've heard from the delegations, there is no sound engineer that comes in and actually takes readings and tests it to make sure it's meets the standards. So, one of the suggestions that we've made to our planning colleagues is that there has to be more work done at the initial application for site plan before the site plan is issued to ensure that there is some commitment to make sure that work's done, so that we're not left having to go back and forth doing all these sound meters.
Better to get it done up front than to have to go back and enforce later when it's too late. And I agree. I've met with a planning staff and they've run me through the process, which is pretty comprehensive overall. I think this is a piece though that they'll need to look at in conjunction with yourselves as part of that process. And I know that they're committed to helping solve this as well. Just on the motion itself, I assume you're supportive of looking into these things as part of the next noise bylaw review and the points that have been raised here.
Mr. Chair, yes, Councillor. I mean, everything that we do, we appreciate the feedback from the community members, from the councillors, and the noise bylaw. I think there's a few other things that could be reviewed. When it's appropriate to bring this forward. I'm not sure. I guess that'll be some discussion for next term of council, but certainly we support the motion that's before us today.
And just last question for me on bylaw, the bylaw part. I'll have another one for legal, but some delegations mentioned the NPC 104. And I know there's a correlation with the 300, as I understand it, in any event. But just want to make sure that the motion as written will allow for bylaw to look at that NPC 300, but also that NPC 104, those specifics for accounting for potential penalty for applying a penalty for that low frequency or tonal noise. Just want to make sure that as part of these discussions here, that's captured in the way the motion's worded. You would assume, I guess, direction to look at that as well.
Mr. Chair, Councillor, thank you. Maybe I'll defer to Samantha on this. I believe the answer is yes, but I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, yes, we would include that in the scope of the review. We would look at this guideline and others.
Thanks so much. That's really helpful. And just last question for me, Chair. Just on the how we go about this on the legal side. Our bylaw regulatory services readings are, often used as evidence for our development colleagues, planning colleagues, that the development complies with the environmental noise control guidelines under the site plan agreement, or complies with our own bylaw itself. Those readings that we've been taking, they're on the cusp, or they may, as we hear, tonal noise and low frequency noise, not necessarily something we're testing for because of the equipment and specialization, but certainly as part of the bylaw. And so because we're not necessarily doing that, does the liability fall on the property owner in this case, or does it fall on us as a city to make sure that they're in compliance with the I guess, site plan agreement?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, the liability generally would fall on the property owner, not the city. The city would be looking to enforce the bylaw. And as bylaw and regulatory services mentioned, they're going to continue to work with the owners to ensure there's compliance.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. Councillor Bradley and then Deroche.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to all the delegations that came out today. I have a similar, maybe somewhat adjacent ongoing issue in my community that I represent of Hunt Club Park, where we have a residential community that abuts a industrial use, and we have a facility that has refrigerated trucks, which I think emit the same sort of low frequency tonal noise that we're seeing from air conditioners. And this facility had expanded and brought their loading docks and bays closer to the residential area. And we do have a berm buffer, but it doesn't seem to buffer these low frequency and tonal noises. So I'm just wondering if this motion, when we do a review, would it capture that type of noise emanating from, I guess, not really stationary, but from uses that utilize refrigerated trucks?
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Chair, we would definitely be looking at this, Councillor, through the review. Currently, refrigerated trucks, if there are perishables, are exempt from the bylaw, as well as loading and unloading during appropriate times. But in this situation, I'm sure that this could be considered.
Great, I appreciate that. And maybe even at the outset in terms of the planning process, which I think is what this motion also aims to address, is that, I don't think this facility should have ever been allowed to expand their operation closer to the residential community, understanding what use was there and that these refrigerated trucks would be there. So I'm hoping as part of that, maybe from a land use planning perspective or a site plan perspective, that we can also look at when we know that these types of equipment generate or emit this low frequency noise, that then we, in that context, have it further as far as possible away from residential areas. So I hope that can be taken under consideration as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Deroche.
Thank you, Chair. To Mr. Chapman, what are you seeing for noise complaints, just generally speaking, overall? Have those increased over time? Are they steady? Is there a per capita increase? I mean, obviously, as we densify and we add more and more people to our city, it is going to get, it's going to change communities in terms of the noise levels. Some are highly problematic, and I don't dismiss those. But what are you seeing overall as a trend? For me, if we review this, and I'm not opposed to that, I think we need to look at it comprehensively and sort of understand the larger context with some of the data that we have.
Mr. Chair, Councillor, thank you for the question. It depends on what we're talking about, what kind of noise. I mean, when we talk about noise, HVAC related equipment, I would say that we have seen a bit of an increase in calls in that area. And I think a lot of this is attributed to the fact that heat pumps and more efficient units are becoming the new norm. And I think, which is great for the environment, but at the same time, just the way that these units operate, they're intended to operate 24/7 or at least 23 hours a day. Whereas, a central air conditioning unit, some of the older ones, the older style of central air conditioning units may run for 6 hours a day. I think that the constant noise is what's affecting some residents, and it is something that we've flagged for review during the next opportunity when the noise bylaw is being reviewed.
Okay, and are you finding there's a trend where I appreciate that if someone's lived in a community for many decades and that street's gone through some change, that there's a concern there. But you also have situations where people are potentially moving in around a transit station, for example, where we're doing that higher density. And wouldn't we tell people in advance, hey, there's going to be noise. There's going to be a train going by your house potentially. I represent Riverside South, and the residents are told through their deed that they're in the airport operating zone. They will be subject to noise. And I've had people write to me saying, I don't like the noise. And the answer is, well, you moved into a community where we're in an operating zone for the airport. So you need to understand what you're getting into. Again, a lot of people here live there many decades and they're going through change, but there are going to be residential communities where I think we just have to give them a heads up when they move in. There's going to be some noise, especially if you're near kind of noise generating things. Okay, that's just a thought. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions from members? Okay, is everyone aware of the motion we're about to vote on? So is the matter approved? Carried? Thank you. Okay, so that matter goes to council for ratification at the next council meeting. Item 8 is notices of motion. Do we have any notices? Seeing none. Inquiries? Seeing none. Item 10 is other business. So the committee approved this matter on agenda. And Vice Chair Hill, if you could just read the therefore clauses, that would be appreciated. Following the introduction of the motion, we have delegations for this item. So we will welcome delegations in about 3 minutes. And then once the delegations have spoke to us, we will entertain questions to staff. So go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Be it therefore resolved that Bylaw 2002-189, as amended by Bylaw 2025, is amended as follows, and that the city's website be updated to reflect this motion. 1. The definition of hardscaping contractor in Section 1 of the bylaw shall be repealed and replaced with the following. Quote, hardscaping contractor, unquote, means a person who is engaged in the business of A, installing, altering, or paving hard landscaping features on private property, such as driveways and parking areas, concrete pads, gravel areas, retaining walls, steps, walkways, and pathways and patios, where such landscaping features are made of asphalt, concrete, interlock, pavers, flagstone, brick, or similar materials, including altering or paving any portion of the highway as part of hardscaping work occurring on adjacent private property, but does not include 1. The sealing or resealing only of driveways or parking areas. 2. The installation or alteration of pools, decks, and fences. 3. The temporary removal and reinstatement of hard landscaping features as part of another lawful construction, repair, or installation activity, provided the work is incidental to that activity and not offered as a standalone service. Or 4. Performing minor repairs or minor alterations. 2. Section 4.1c of Schedule 36 of the bylaw shall be repealed and replaced with the following. Has provided the address and contact information for the applicant or an agent of the applicant, A, to which the city may send a notice, documentation, or communication that may be required under this bylaw, and B, at which the applicant or the applicant's agent will accept receipt of any notice, documentation, or communication during regular business hours. 3. Section 9 of Schedule 36 of the bylaw shall be repealed and replaced with the following. Every licensee shall ensure that every vehicle used for the hardscaping business has a sign attached or painted on the sides showing the name and contact information of the business in a clear and legible manner. Mr. Chair, if I could just a couple of sentences to introduce this. This is essentially a leveling out. We had the good exercise of the review process for the hardscaping landscaping process in the fall of last year. The bylaw was enacted, and we're about to embark on really the high season for these events, which is the reason why we've put this forward today to try and have positive impacts on the industry. There are a few hiccups, I think, in the application of the modifications, which this is essentially directed to effect. So I would be probably a bit too bold to say this is a technical amendment, but frankly, that's what this is achieving, is balancing the needs of the city and the purposes and the spirit of the original existing bylaw with the application so that it doesn't inadvertently harm the landscaping industry in a way that is inappropriate. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. And normally a member would give notice of motion and we would deal with it with a month later. But given that the landscaping season has started and we recognize the importance of dealing with this today, we've put it on the agenda to deal with today. So thank you, Vice Chair. So 3 delegates, Mr. Jonathan Gilman is first, followed by David Wildbohr, followed by Lindsay Ross. So Mr. Gilman, are you here? Welcome. All delegates have up to 5 minutes to speak. I'll let you know at 1 minute if you're still speaking that you have 1 minute left. And just press that button in front of you at the bottom of the microphone there. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Chair Brockington, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Jonathan Gilman. I own Ottawa Interlock Repair, and I've been doing hardscaping work in the city for 15 years. I'm also a member of Landscape Ontario and sit on the board of the Better Business Bureau. I raise these last 2 because I want this committee to know that the people in this room today are not here to resist accountability. We welcome it. We believe in it. That said, I want to be honest with you. Hardscaping has, at times, earned its reputation as a Wild West for good reason. There are operators who cut corners, who avoid permits, who leave homeowners with problems and no recourse. That is real, and that is part of why we are here. What brought us to this table is the recognition that the bylaw that came into force on March 1st, while well-intentioned, was developed without the kind of industry collaboration that would have caught some of its unintended consequences. We saw that quickly, and rather than simply pushing back, we asked to be part of fixing it. Over the past several weeks, we have worked with hardscapers, other tradespeople, city staff, and councillors to develop the motion before you today. That process, that conversation, is exactly what should have happened from the beginning. And it is exactly what we want more of. The motion is the first step. There are other provisions in the bylaw that need attention, and we have put our concerns in writing and shared them with the Mayor's office and Councillor Hill. We're asking this committee today not just to support the motion, but to support the continuation of that collaborative process. We want a licensing framework that works for homeowners, works for the city, and works for contractors, and we believe that is achievable. There's a few items listed in this motion, I think 3 that were changed. I have 2 colleagues here who will also be delegating. I've been tasked with addressing the first of these items, specifically 1, 3, and 4. And I think that is something that everyone can get behind. Okay, so when this license came in, I started chatting with a general contractor I work with. He showed me a project he was getting organized, and I realized something. As part of the larger fencing project, he had to put down 9 patio stones. According to the new bylaw, he had to have a license. So I started reviewing this with other contractors and talking to city staff, and realized there's consensus here. There was no exclusion for incidental or minor work. So this is one of these unintended consequences that affects not just hardscapers, but all exterior contractors and consumers who use their services. This license was meant to do with hardscaping, not decks, fences, foundation repairs, and so on, that all have incidental hardscaping as part of their scope. So I have some pictures here. This one of foundation repair in Ottawa. It's a foundation repair. It's a pretty big project, and they have to do some landscaping at the end of it. While they're not hardscape contractors, they need to do that. And currently, according to the letter of the law, they would need to bring a separate contractor in to do the work. You can go to the next slide. Decks. Decks have their own permitting system in place. Deck builders are not hardscapers, but you don't want your steps to go down onto the grass. You need to put a hardscape landing in. And again, my friend, the deck builder, he's going to bring me in to do that as a licensed contractor, which results in more cost to consumer. Now there's another company on site that's a timeline delays, working with 2 schedules rather than 1. He should be allowed to do this work himself as it's incidental, and that's what this item 3, I believe, is addressing. Next one. Driveway sealing has already been excluded, but say you wanted to alter the pavers, this is very common. You have pavers at the side of your driveway, not exactly a new hardscaping project or any change, but you can't, under the existing bylaw, address that at all.
1 minute.
Next up, I think there's one more. This is something really common. You bring a handyman in to address something around your door frame, and he's got to change some pavers around there. We see this all the time from our side, but you should be able to hire a handyman to come in for a couple hours, fix some rotted boards, and he shouldn't have to get a license. These minor, this addition, I guess, of an inclusion for minor work will help smaller contractors who aren't hardscape contractors finish their projects without having to stop and bring someone else in or go through the whole licensing process, which, while not crazy burdensome, does add some paperwork, insurance requirements. I had to get bonded. There's a bunch of other things you have to add in. So we hope that this will go with our goal of keeping hardscapers licensed and above board and letting the other guys do their jobs without having to bring in an expert hardscaper for some small things. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Gilman, for your delegation. We do have a question from my colleague, Councillor Drosh.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the delegation. I'm in favor of taking a second look at this. I appreciate your very candid comments at the beginning that we do see challenges, and there has been, unfortunately, some poor choices by some that have really kind of stained the reputation of this sector, and that's unfortunate, right? And it's not just this sector where this happens. I think part of the challenge at City Hall is when we develop policy or regulations, sometimes we've got a stakeholder group that's identified, right? There is the Home Builders Association, or there's a community association, or there's the taxi industry. They're organized, they're ready, they're following what's going on at City Hall. And I didn't sense from this one that you've got that kind of same organization that we can plug into. And I'm not saying it's your fault in that sense, but maybe going forward, we need to, or you need to think about, let's form some group that can be kind of the focal point for the city to dialogue with, so that we can hear you and understand your situation better and shape the work that we're doing to develop policy and regulations and how we implement it. So is that something that's happening in the sector? Just looking at how we get together. Sometimes it's a crisis, if you will, that says, look, we're not organized. We need to be. And I would just counsel you, maybe it's time to look at that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have Landscape Ontario, and there's a local chapter, and actually the president of Landscape Ontario is here with us today. He will be delegating, but we definitely saw trouble communicating with the city and presenting a unified front. And over the past few weeks, we've flipped that around quite a bit, and we're all getting on the same page. I know I had a list of about 40 people who wanted to be here, but they're working right now, and I think 10 are here, which is pretty good for hardscape contractors and hardscaping companies, with, I think, 2 days notice. So we're really putting the work in to help the city and help ourselves, and to be more unified, be better, be more accountable.
Yeah, I look forward to that. And I think, if I can facilitate that in any way, I would, or maybe we need to formalize it going forward with the city of a working group or what have you. I wouldn't be opposed to that. So thank you for your comments today. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Before I turn to the Vice Chair, I just want to acknowledge that we have students and faculty from Gloucester High School with us this morning. Thank you for joining us. This is the Emergency Preparedness and Protective Services Committee. This is a standing committee of City Council that oversees the Ottawa Fire Service, the Ottawa Paramedic Service, Emergency Preparedness, and Ottawa Bylaw and Regulatory Services. So right now we're discussing an item under the purview of Ottawa Bylaw, hardscaping, landscaping. Potential change to a bylaw. So we're in the middle of a discussion right now. So you're welcome to stay as long as you want. We just ask all of our guests to respect the proceedings, and you can enter and exit as you wish. So thank you, under the guidance of our colleague, Councillor Tierney. So you're always welcome here at City Hall. Vice Chair Hill, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to acknowledge the whole process that we got into for looking at this bylaw was to balance the need to protect consumers, to protect residents from some of the predatory actors that you'd previously mentioned. And I think the goal that we're getting to with this is a better balance to ensure entry into the market for smaller hardscape interested businesses, maybe some grade 10 students, but also to make sure that those small businesses have the opportunity to prosper and not be costed out and not to see the margins not pencil, which would then cause those nefarious actors to take advantage of that type of market situation. So I just wanted to validate that the modifications we're looking to make with this motion today, maybe it doesn't get us to the A+ solution, but it certainly marches us closer towards that direction than where we were before in February or in March when this came into effect.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, that's it. Thank you.
All right, there are no other questions. Mr. Gilman, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Mr. Wildbohr, followed by Ms. Ross. Pardon me, I'm sorry. Good afternoon, sir. You have up to 5 minutes.
Chair Brockington and members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today and allowing this motion to be tabled. My name is Dave Wildeboer, and I'm the owner of Wild Ridge Landscapes, Inc., and I'm here representing professionals in the hardscape and landscape industry who take pride in operating responsibly, serving clients well, working safely, and contributing positively to our community. I first came to Ottawa in 1995 to study at Carleton and then followed that with more studies at Ottawa U. And after some time away, my family and I returned in 2011 to build both our lives and our business here. Ottawa has been an excellent place for us to grow, and we take great pride in the work we do and the role we play in our community. Today, we employ between 40 and 60 staff members, full-time and seasonal, and are committed to investing further in this city. We are active members in the trade association that we addressed earlier, Landscape Ontario, and also members of Greater Ottawa Home Builders Association. I'm here today to express my support for the motion that is in front of you, especially the amendments to the hardscape licensing that I've got concerns about. First, I would like to express support for the revisiting of the requirement for staffed physical locations. While this is something my company is capable of doing easily in professional contract, however, many professional contractors operate from home offices, vehicles, or small storage spaces, especially in their early years of their business, myself included. This has long been a normal and effective way to run a business in our industry, and it does not diminish professionalism or accountability. Adjusting this requirement would help ensure smaller operators are not unintentionally excluded. Second, I'd like to address the requirements around vehicle signage. Sorry, I'm struggling here a bit. I fully support the intent behind clear and visible identification. Like many contractors, we already prioritize transparency by using job site signage to clearly identify who is working on a property. This has proven helpful by both bylaw officers and neighboring residents, and it reflects our commitment to being accessible and accountable. At the same time, many companies, including ours, have invested significantly in thoughtful professional branding on our vehicles. These designs are created to be visible, recognizable, and aligned with how our customers find us and engage with us. I have a few pictures here to demonstrate our take on this, and I've also brought in a few of what the implications would be for my colleague Jonathan's company if the current state of the bylaw was to be maintained. So if you just scroll quickly through these, they're not here to be brand recognition. They're here to support my argument. Keep going. So the current bylaw requirement, that is an example of a brand investment, and the previous one, and this is what the bylaw is asking from us as an industry. And I just wanted to say that this creates additional challenges and will incur significant costs, especially for those of us who have fleets of vehicles, and in my opinion, does not actually improve the outcome for homeowners or for enforcement. For that reason, I would encourage the committee and council to consider the proposed motion to revisit this requirement with a goal of achieving visibility while still allowing for reasonable flexibility in how it is implemented. At the end of the day, I want to be part of a professional, accountable industry that serves the public well. I believe that some thoughtful adjustments, this bylaw can better support both that goal and the many responsible businesses working hard to uphold it, several of whom have joined us today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir, for your delegation. It's appreciated. Councillor Kelly has a question. Councillor?
Thank you very much, Chair. Not so much a question, just a comment. I'm aware that Mr. Wildeboer is a Ward 5 resident, and I appreciate the fact that he's come here today. And I heard from several hardscape contractors and subcontractors yesterday from the area who provided really thoughtful feedback on what we had passed previously and the content of Councillor Hill's motion. So it made coming to my decision today a lot easier, hearing from people like you. And I just wanted to thank you for your thorough and thoughtful delegation today, and let you know that I will be supporting Councillor Hill's motion. So have a wonderful day, Mr. Wildeboer.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. Thank you, sir, for your delegation today. It's appreciated. Mr. Ross. Welcome to you, sir. You have, as you know, up to 5 minutes, and yes, go ahead.
Chair Brockington and members of the committee, thank you. I'll be brief as my colleagues have covered many of the specifics well. My name is Lindsay Ross. I own Living Green Landscaping. We operate primarily within the City of Ottawa. I also serve as the president of Landscape Ontario, the provincial association representing over 2,000 businesses in the horticulture and landscaping sector. I want to speak to this motion both as a business owner directly affected and as someone responsible for the industry's relationship with governments across Ontario. I'll be personal for a moment. My business is based in Chesterville in North Dundas, just southeast of the city boundary. Canada Post does not deliver to my address. A P.O. box is not a workaround for me. It is my mailing address. Without today's motion, that fact alone would place me in contravention of the requirements for the license I am otherwise happy to be compliant with. The same is true for contractors across the rural villages in Councillor Skulski's and Councillor Kelly's ward, Metcalfe, Greeley, Carp, Kinburn, and many others. Contractors in these rural villages have a P.O. box through no choice of their own. Today's motion would correct that, and we're grateful for it. To address, and Councillor DeRocha stepped out, but to address Councillor DeRocha's comments about organization, one of the challenges in a non-restricted trade is that membership in an association like Landscape Ontario isn't mandatory. Landscape Ontario was certainly involved in the consultation process. Sometimes things that we consulted about made it into the final bylaw. Sometimes things don't. And so some of those things are things that were raised in the consultation process that we're trying to address today. The process that produced today's motion, contractors, city staff, the mayor's office, all working together towards a shared goal, is exactly how we want to continue to operate. We have shared a detailed written submission with the mayor's office and some of the councillors, and we look forward to continuing the conversation about this bylaw. The goal of this bylaw, protecting homeowners, supporting reputable businesses, and bringing accountability to the sector, is our goal too. This motion moves us in the right direction. We are committed to doing our part to get the rest of the way there. We ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross, for your delegation this afternoon. I don't see any questions at this time, so thank you very much for coming down. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Before I yield to my colleagues for questions, I'm just wondering, staff, whether the general manager or our director of bylaw, do you want to make any comments with respect to the motion that's before us today?
Thank you, Chair. I believe that the motion that's before us today aligns very well with the original intent of the hardscaping licensing that we put in. That bylaw went into effect on March 1st, and as you could hear from the speakers today, there were some issues that were identified over that period, and I think that the proposed amendments today will help just provide further clarity that I believe also still aligns with the objectives of the initial bylaw.
Okay, that's appreciated. Thank you very much. Vice Chair Hill and then Councillor Skulski.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate General Manager that in complement to this amending motion, recently staff sent out a clarifying memorandum that identified some of the communication that perhaps was misinterpreted or that wasn't as clear as it could have been. And I believe that is going to align well with the amending motion. I wanted to speak to two components of that just for you to be able to clarify. I wanted to talk about the estimated date of completion of the work aspect, and I wanted to talk about the transaction records aspect and see if you could speak to both of those issues as it pertains to that technical information.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor, the estimated date of completion of the work. Currently, the bylaw requires landscapers to include certain information in their contracts with homeowners. One of these requirements is to provide an estimated date of completion for the work. Hardscapers will not be fined or lose their license because work is not completed by the estimated completion date indicated in a contract. The purpose of including this required information is so that expectations are clear and to encourage communication regarding change to the estimated completion date. Licensees may also wish to include a disclaimer noting that the estimated completion date may change depending on factors such as weather and availability. In relation to transaction records, licensees are required to maintain records of client transactions in a ledger or recording system that is approved by the Chief License Inspector. A licensee will meet this requirement as long as their system of record keeping allows them to maintain clear records of transactions and to produce those records when requested by the Chief License Inspector.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councillor Skulski, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question really about process and understanding. So I remember when this was approved, there was consultation that was undertaken and that kind of led to the resulting bylaw. But can you explain? So I was sort of doing some reflection about my experience in the federal government and how they have like a Canada Gazette process. So you publish draft regulations, it goes through, a certain 30-day window where everybody can see what it says and then provide comment, and then you have to go through that again. Can you explain exactly how that works at the city so that it seems that, folks maybe didn't get a chance to get into the details, and I just want to better understand when those details become available to people.
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I'll start and I'll hand it over to Samantha to provide some more information. With respect to our bylaw reviews, we follow the council approved bylaw review framework, which sets out different steps for each bylaw review. That includes a consultation phase, which could involve surveying and reporting back. But with that, I'll just hand it over to Samantha and she'll be able to provide a little bit more information with respect to that process.
So thank you for the question, Chair. As part of our bylaw review work plan, we prepare a consultation plan that's tailored to each bylaw review. And so it does include surveys and meeting with community groups to prepare recommendations. Once those recommendations are prepared, we then send a what we learned report, sort of summarizing the consultation and where our recommendations have landed to the people that participated in consultation. And then our bylaw is attached to the draft report and made public in advance of the committee meeting. So that's the current process. I can perhaps tease that we are looking at our framework currently. And one of the things that we are looking at is the amount of time people have to look into regulations and how those are shared during our consultation. So that's certainly a conversation that we're happy to continue.
Great. Yeah, thanks for that. I think that we need to give, like, truly, I've always believed the devil is in the details. And once you actually read the bylaw text, that's when you can appreciate the implication that will have on an industry. And so I think that might be something for the future on how we actually modify the process to give ample time for industry to react. And of course, industry stakeholders to really, I mean, they have to also reach out to their membership and ask a lot of good, important questions. And that is likely not feasible in a very short window before, you know, the publication of it on our eScribe and the meeting a few days later. So yeah, I think I'll be focusing a little bit more on the procedural opportunity here to improve our regulatory process. I will certainly support this. I wasn't in favor of this altogether. I dissented on this originally, but I also, you know, I think it's important that we respond to how industry reacted as well.
Thank you for those comments. We're going to go to wrap up now. Back to the mover, Vice Chair Hill.
Yes, thank you. And I'll just reinforce the comments that Councillor Skalski was making. I think from a process perspective, we live in an imperfect world and we have imperfect processes, and we do the best we can with the information we have at any given time. I think the original bylaw modification process was well-intentioned and did a good job, and it got us to the 85%. This has taken us up to the 96%. It's still not going to be perfect, but I think it's going to get us through that test and adjust period so that we can have that better balance. So I look forward to my colleagues' support on this, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Is that motion before us, is that carried? Carried. Thank you. Okay, all right. Thank you. We'll just hold applause. So before we adjourn, I just have a few things to raise. So our next meeting is May 28th. We will receive the Ottawa Fire Services 2025 annual report, as well as the licensing bylaw review and reenactment, which will bring forward recommendations following a comprehensive multi-year review. May 4th to 8th is the Emergency Preparedness Week, which focuses on educating communities across Ontario on how to prepare for emergency situations. Councillors, please watch for communications from the Public Safety Service recognizing this week. And May 18th to 22nd is Paramedic Services Week. This will be an opportunity to recognize the vital role paramedics play in emergency healthcare and to highlight their evolving role in community care and innovation. Okay, if you think today was a long meeting, as a reminder, tomorrow there is a special joint meeting of this committee and our friends in Public Works and Infrastructure to consider the Safe Access to Social Infrastructure Bylaw Review Report. I want to remind you the meeting starts at 9 a.m. and we will be in council chambers. We anticipate a lengthy discussion and day tomorrow. So have a good breakfast. There's no further business to today's committee meeting, so we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.